for last year, and we thought of doing it this year, but eventually we just felt like, at the end of the day, with all these restrictions and no foresight as to when all of this will go away, we might as well just make it a virtual reunion this year. But next year is planned to be really, really big.
Please, you guys, we should start in Canada. I've not been to Canada before. I've been been in America for almost 40 years, and I've never been to Canada.
Well, we get confirmed PR spot here.
Well, now you're talking, my brother.
We're not missing much when it comes to Nigerian food at all.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really, really looking forward to it. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too, sir.
I know you're busy. You're busy there getting things ready.
Oh yeah, we're just setting up now. I think we're good. We
can live now.
Please turn on your videos if you can when you come on, and especially our co-hosts, panelists. Let's see.
Ogagos.
My brother.
I salute you.
Flow, Baba.
Ogami.
My roommate. My roommate of old. That's a way for me to show, say, me, to show say you yourself, man, you're not a young man.
But I don't get beer like you do. Ogagos. I know, this is serious.
That one no matter. I'm just validating that we were there together.
That is true. That is true. It's nice to see you.
It's great to see you, my brother.
I'm actually, I just told the guy, I'm in New Orleans with family.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I know. And I said, I can't miss it. So I'll be a part of it, but I'm going to be mostly off camera. And then eventually, when family pulls me, then I have to be gone. But this is such a great thing. So I didn't want to miss it at all. Yeah.
I mean, mental health is a big issue these days. And thank you so much, Flo, for bringing this to the office.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. I need my T-shirt of that X-Jam. I need my T-shirt. Oga Presido.
Oh, no,
I need that T-shirt. You do.
See, so person don't know say Coconut Day for this America. All these people that are hiding. Oh God.
My Oga.
So until person crazy before now come help us. I mean, no.
The person if he Chris wearing that T-shirt, man. Good. I bet when they find out that I need to find out.
You want a T-shirt like this?
I want to look good.
You give out more value to the brand, then we go give you T-shirts.
Exactly.
I love that. That's a good way to sell that T-shirt. I love it.
Yeah.
That is the best rendition I've seen so far. The ones we had in Europe, tiny X-Jam.
Oh, this one now me designed this one.
Show it. Oh my God. It's audacious, man.
We're going to use this one to raise funds. Okay, put a price tag on it now. No, I'm serious.
I'm putting a price tag on it on you.
I know they play now inside advertisement. Now like this, so.
The problem is I can't see the value. I'm seeing your value. So.
Nice spin.
Hey, Ayo. Now psychiatrists you bring cover being a hype man.
That combo.
Or is it part of the work?
You know my forefathers are Igbo man. We sell stuff, So
that's why you go talk now. Now this one found the way I go work
everything na market.
Market.
see our UK people coming in. Oga Tunde.
How now? Long time.
So now until the thing involve mental health, now you come there. You should charge extra fee.
I do, I read
man. My yellow battery.
As the matter can't enter mental health, UK can't stay awake. Say,
my head is going through some things right now.
You say that only you.
No. Your problem is too much money. You don't know what to do.
I wish.
In fact, I'm beginning to see the direction where Ogo go carry people go. Once you complain, they say how much money in your account. Your mental health, they financially triggered.
Oh my God.
I'm using my phone, so I'll try and log in with my laptop.
Hey, no problem.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So, Wale, it's good to meet you.
Same here.
See?
And you were 95 set as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, I came in 94. I don't know if they call it 95 set or 94. I don't know how that's.
It's 94, 95 set, but our service
94,
numbers
95.
again.
I think the service number started with 95, right?
95, yeah, that's right.
95, yeah. So,
and while this conversation is going on, who is taking the side bets on when their big grammar go turn to our regular English?
It will only take like 1 minute after the
I'll promise you one thing. I will keep my grammar to English. Normal.
Make you remember, say
no egghead rubbish.
Your audience no video, even people when they come your office. Your audience
real.
Some people they forget. You know, you leave them small, then leave them small.
My gas full here now. So how do they do grammar?
When I first met Oga Goss after how many years of AFMS, him don't even remember RSM. So I had to be refreshing.
No. That's therapy. In a quiet mental therapy.
I forgot a lot of things, but no be RSM.
No, Flo, I know the joke. Oga Goss don't remember a lot of things. I'm saying,
Flo has to take my side on that one, man. That one. I mean, I forgot a lot of things, but no be RSM.
I don't blame him now. Defense mechanism. AFMS.
And then he don't come up for Nigeria since like 18. So by the time
no, that God's not forget.
You have to be reminding him now broken English is a take great person for
man, thanks to now. Thanks to now.
No. Person will come
brought me back.
18. Because his life has been here now.
Yeah.
18.
I mean, almost what, 35 years?
Yeah.
Now
God say find out. You know?
Yeah.
Now for now they take greet us that time.
You're not fair, man.
Oh my God. I must say, gentlemen, I'm so happy to be with you because, man, this is just something solid. And, I think for me, especially after I finished AFMS, I went back to East. It was like sending me to purgatory, man. Because at least guys in the West, you'll be seeing each other. Guys in Daytown or KD or Kano, you'll be seeing each other. But, man, going back to Enugu and Soka, you'll be like, oh boy, people ask me, which could you go to? One school like that up north.
And the thing is that because to say you connect, there are some extra way go on Suka now.
That's why I'm so happy I'm joining now. I wish I connected earlier.
Yeah. You know? If you be say you walk past some people for road self, say nah.
Oh no. Oh, that thing happened though. When my sets we met up in the UK in London 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So guys they airport, they like for them for airport, they wait. So I call the walker towards them. They look beyond me. See wahala. So I walked, joined them, follow come they look. Come they ask my bag, who might they wait for? They look me, stranger, they talk to them. Come look me again. I say, wait, is that bad? You don't even know what I look like.
They could not recognize you, your own guys.
My own guys, and I may be deputy engineer for myself.
No worry, now your bald head, no worry, no be anything.
On the bald head begin now, Superman start early now. So waiting.
You don't go blame them now. Your bald head, they shine, they get the way they shine. Nobody can recognize them.
See, Victor, put your picture now.
I did, no worry.
How far now?
Victor, show your face. Now, once in a while, we will see you.
Shagsy.
I did, sir.
You never rub powder?
No, not yet. Okay, boss. Morning, sir.
Hey, my brother. Victor, how you doing now?
I did fine, sir. How you doing, sir?
And how's the great state of Florida?
Oh, we're doing well. We're keeping Trump alive. Yes.
I beg, the doctors make una tell them, make they know they mention name where they trigger people.
So, for example, Tibet, for example.
because that's how you go mention. That's how you go mention name now. Half the people go drop the phone. Wait, no. I'm not doing this today.
Oh my God.
Okay, we could start in 2 minutes. I think we'll just give 2 minutes for more people to join in. Okay. Then we start at 3:10 Eastern time. So we've got 2 minutes more.
No problem.
How about Falai?
Oh, then they greet you. Him know the Biafala in a flow. Now Dr. Flo with the color. Dr. Flo to answer you. You can't Falai for the younger brother. Him now Dr. Flo.
There are two of them now.
No contact Nigeria English. They call him name now Dr. Flo.
Okay, sorry, Professor.
No mind. Okay, follow to me. When you begin bear the dial,
that's why.
Now that name throw me off.
No, I have to twist them a bit.
How you doing?
Not bad.
Ogami, it's nice.
Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Nice to see you.
You too. I've been seeing a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn and
yes,
and what of your brother?
He's well. He's in DC, Maryland area. So hopefully he joins the call. But
okay,
everybody's got many things they're chasing these days. So
I understand.
I go represent that family.
Okay,
this call.
No problem.
Dayo, now not be UK you did.
I did UK. There was a time you came, I think. I was going to meet you, but I couldn't meet you.
Okay, for that I will come back. So you go take care of me.
No problem. I saw Gus. I saw us when he came last time.
Okay, nice.
He took very good care of me, actually.
Awesome. Up yellow. Okay, they come. All the suffer where I suffer from my hand. Now enjoyment now I go enjoy.
You should know.
Gus don't want. Gus,
come on, small. Dr. Flo. Now you supposed to be the session. Don't be saying you come break down here.
Me self need therapist. Need therapist.
Because I don't know how someone like Ogo or Popola will come to fix senior set.
When we still get traumatized.
I don't know how they can help you if your PTSD can't go trigger this
afternoon. Actually, I make those guys. Let me just ask a very quick question. I've been doing this every time I do anything with AFMS guys.
Yeah.
How many, I beg a show of hands, how many people are still having dreams that you're in AFMS and you're trying to run from somebody or trying to dodge? Show of hands, I beg.
That would not go away.
Like you did dream. Wait, you did dream am or be they always think am?
They dream am.
They think am. If not think am, yes. But now they dream am. But they always think am. If I'm jogging in the morning, I always go back to the person who was our lead runner, Yunto. Yunto was like our horse then. So when I run, whenever I'm jogging, I'm thinking like, oh, I want to be like,
Jolly, they chase you.
Yes. So I always always go back. Anytime, any kind of exercise, I go back to AFMS setting.
Yeah.
Almost all the time. I kind of replay.
I have this theory that the first 4 sets, they get that kind of traumatizing dream.
The trauma started from. The trauma where we now meet, where still there for AFMS. Where do you think it originated from? You think say now? Wait, you think somebody just came in the middle and started it?
No, I'm just saying, trauma with officers and the different non-commissioned officers and so on.
We had it.
Their own no go day like students trauma. You understand?
Hey.
We get this guy. We get this guy PTSD meeting. Make you ask the question when other people join. See,
When I
ask it again.
the trauma in FMS till date, it started from 80 sets.
Yes.
They keep
When I
on-
passed out, I had no emotions, no feelings.
Okay, who tell you
Even
you
when-
don't get them now?
No, when they talk to me, I start crying. In fact, today I was thinking of Keto when I think something happened and then he was passing in his car. We were just saying, Megame, come and see punishment from night till morning. And that's why till tomorrow I'll never jog. I'm sorry. I mean, that jogging, I can't do it again.
Okay, I actually remember that day. The Ket Erinde brought the ambulance to school.
Yeah, thank you.
For fire alarm. And he was going, banana, fire alarm, banana, fire. Then some people begin say, banana, megemu. Then he heard.
Wait. Also, Erinde was in that school before. Because it was in our time.
It was CI academics at the time.
Really?
So before he became CI academics, he wasn't CI academics immediately. He was just he didn't start being CIA, was he?
No, he didn't.
He was math teacher.
Yes.
He was math teacher. He came in as a flight lieutenant, and then from then, he was actually CI. He was CI academics. He was second in command at the CI. He was next to.
I had no idea. I knew him as a wing commander, and he was commandant. He came in 2 months into my sets, taking over positions, and the guy he dealt with us there.
Oh no, he was part of the guys that started the trauma.
Yeah.
Don Soje was saying it. How he didn't even let you guys go into NDA or something like that. I don't know what.
Messed my class up so badly. I think that's why we had the lowest representation in NDA, in the armed forces, everything. He totally put my whole class off. Anything to do with military. Oh my god.
The guy was just vindictive, man. I'm telling you.
He took 80% of their appointment holders, got rid of everybody, and created new ones. Oh my god.
All right, sorry, gentlemen, to cut this interesting conversation. We're comparing notes already, but our time is fast spent. We're 15 minutes in already, so you will get the show on the road. Thanks everybody. Thanks for making the time to join this meeting. We will start off with confirming from the media team that we're okay. And then I'll yield to Oga President to start off the session with opening remarks and introduction of the panelists. Oga.
All right. So welcome, gentlemen. I can't see any ladies, so it's all gentlemen. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming on board today to basically talk about mental health, something that basically is all over the place, actually. So I really, first of all, want to appreciate the fact that you actually accepted the call to show up. And I know how busy you are, especially this period. So for you to actually make the time to show up there, one, really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And so we're hoping to have an amazing time today, have questions answered, and we're recording this so that we can play it back and hopefully help a lot more people. So today I want to introduce the panel. I wish they had told me earlier on, I would have read the bios, but I kind of know the names of the people. And so just by looking at the people right here, we have Dr. Flo Falahi. He's not new to us. He's been doing a whole lot for the ex-JAM community within North America in particular in terms of mental health, bringing it to the forefront. Dr. Flo actually used to run some sessions on Wednesday, Checking with Dr. Flo, that actually still goes on till date. It's just not called Checking with Dr. Flo anymore, but it's an environment where people get together and actually just have conversations. So thank you for that. Then Dr. Ogo. So let me just quickly tell you something about Dr. Ogo Chukujama. So they said, we get one psychiatrist for Canada. I say, who? They say, Dr. Ogo. And I now realized I've been seeing his name. I reached out to him and he was like, Ogake, your name precedes you. I say, you go get our time. He said, I will make sure that it happens. So for that, actually, I really, really appreciate it. Actually, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because I know how busy you guys are right now. So thank you very much actually for accepting to do this. And then inside our exco meeting, there was somebody said, we get one doctor one psychiatrist where they for America. We say for this America, they say yes. They say Dr. Popola. They say, why haven't we heard of him? Then Ayo now said, I think I remember he's my set or something like that. We said, oh yeah, go and speak his language to him and bring him here. I was expecting that he will come back with a lot of grammar that why he can't show up. But this is Dr. Popola right here. I'm seeing him for the first time, and I'm really excited that he basically took the call. For me, it means one big deal. There's one big deal. This brand. This brand means a lot to all of us, right? And this that we are doing is actually what elevates the brand, that actually makes other people want to be associated with it. So now we have scenarios where people will say, oh, I'm an ex-Joe also, now sister school, right? I'm not saying that I'm just saying that, that now happens, right? You see people who be like, oh, my brother went to that school, or why? Because the brand is valuable. And this kind of events is what makes it valuable. So thank you very much for adding to it, right? And so I'm hoping that everybody will be free enough to bring in a whole lot of contributions today and basically help elevate, first of all, the awareness of mental health and what we can do to basically help ourselves. So thank you very much for that. So I'll hand it over to Ayo, and then we'll go on from there.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, just to thank the panelists. Through the past few days and weeks leading up to this event, we've called on their support. We've thrown in questions to them. We've bounced off ideas back and forth with Oga Flo as well. So again, like Ogake said, it's a busy period for you, but we appreciate you taking the time to support us. And it's a discussion that I think there's no better time to have these discussions than now, when we've been through, the entire world has been through a significant challenge with the pandemic within the past months. And, it's definitely had some impact on some mental health. We've lost, people have lost loved ones, people have lost jobs, people have, the different multiple ways that it's impacted us in general. So the ability to just, have this platform where we can discuss as a family and, get directions or pointers from experts, I think it's priceless. So we really appreciate everyone, the panelists and everybody joining the call today. So with that, we would get the show on the road and move things over to Oga Gochukujama to lead the way with the presentation.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let me start by saying I'm very happy to be here. I used to do more with the UK X-Jam brand, and it's such a pleasure to join the North American brand, and especially bringing value to mental health to our people, our brand, Nigerians in general. So we figured we're going to do a Q&A at the end of this. We believe very strongly that we're brothers. No question is too silly. We will take any and all questions. We're very lucky to have Dr. Flo here and Wole as well. And hopefully between the three of us, we should be able to address any and all questions that anybody would have with regards to mental health. Before I jump into the actual presentation that I have, I just want to say as well that I think as infamous boys, we're different in the sense that everybody understands that no matter what's happening, you give the best you can. The whole strive to excel, I think it's in our DNA. And I think to put it in Niger English, the way we understand, no matter what you're doing in front of you, you always go, what's the worst that'll happen? Let me try. And I think that's what we do. That's part of the brand. So I did a very quick presentation. I put a few stuff together. I would try and get through it as quick as possible. I try to keep the language as simple as possible, but what it is essentially is me trying to demystify mental health, the different diagnoses that we have, and hopefully this will create a platform for all the questions to come, and then we'll try and take them. So without further ado, I'm just gonna jump into Let me see if I can share my screen. Files. Okay, I'm having I shared the screen earlier. Let me see if I can come out of this page and do it again. Can you guys see my screen yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, let me try this again. All right, for some reason it's not coming up. Do you think the recording is interfering with this by any chance, Ayo?
No.
You can also try and send it to.
You could send it to.
Yeah.
Or you could post it, or you could send. Let them just private message you.
Okay.
Yeah. That way, anybody who can pull it up can pull it up. Maybe you can just now just say, okay, open this.
Okay.
All right. Same time. That way.
All right. Just give me a second. Let me find.
So I just sent you a link. You could send it to that email, and then I can open it and drive it.
Okay. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Great.
Excellent. Okay, and I'm just going to start the slideshow. So apologies for the brief interruption there. All right, so okay, so the talk is on mental health and emotional health, and the outline would be this. I'll do a brief introduction of who I am, what mental illness and wellness is all about, what the early warning signs usually is, common types of mental illnesses, particularly this is new in Nigeria. It wasn't there before, suicidal behavior, and then quickly jump into recovery. I will try and get through this within 20 minutes. If I can do any faster, that would be better. So that's my bio. I went to UNN. I graduated in 2004. I moved to Ireland for specialist training in 2006. When I moved, I was initially looking at doing residency in tropical medicine. So I did a diploma in that. And then I met one of my mentors who talked me into mental health, into psychiatry. The way he figured it at the time was most organs in the body had been taken care of, and we didn't know much about the brain. And he felt that there was a lot of areas of advance that was going on there, lots of research grants going on there as well. So talked a few of us into it, and we're very happy that we did. So I switched to psychiatry. I did my residency there in Ireland. I also did a master's degree, and 3 years ago, my wife and I got talking, and we figured that the best time to move to North America was then. So we looked at moving to Canada, and I did the fellowship and I moved here. And finally, just a quick mention that while I was in Ireland, I worked in 7 different hospitals. And since I moved, those are the places things I've done. I'm currently the medical director in Selkirk Mental Health Center, which is a 252-bed hospital, psychiatric hospital here in Canada, and it's the biggest hospital here. And we hope we do good work for everybody. And going from presenting to everybody else to present to my people is really a joy for me. I'm just going to skip the bio in the hospital and get into mental health. So we always go mental health. It's this big mystery for everybody. But I figured these two definitions would describe it adequately for everybody. So I'll go with the first one. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we feel, how we act, how we think. It also determines how we handle stress, and especially how we make choices in life due to that stress. So what that means essentially is if you line up 10 people, right? And those 10 people have the exact same stressor thrown at them. How they react to it is not a function of the stressor, but how they react to it would be a function of where you are in that continuum on your mental health. In other words, if you have very good resilience, it might be water off a duck's back. And if you're not doing so well, or if you're really stressed out, the last thing that will just go on the camel's back, I'll break it, then you'd react to it negatively. So depending on where you are in that continuum, you could collapse or you could get on with your life. Mental illness is usually a brain-based condition, except for recently we started finding some GIT type illnesses that might affect the mental health, but mostly it's a brain-based thing. So in essence, because we all have brains, that simply means that anybody and everybody, but by the grace of God, can have a mental illness. And I'd like us to think about that for a second. Anybody can have a mental illness. So yes, socially is something that we don't talk about much. Coming from a military background that we all did, we've all got the macho attitude to life, but at the same time, mental health is still a thing. So it's really good that we're trying to afford ourselves the ability to talk about it. And mental health can affect anybody at any time. We've noticed it can come on in childhood, it can come on in your adolescence, and it can come on in your adulthood. So what are the factors that would contribute to your mental health having difficulties? Well, it's multifactorial, and it could be from any of these parts. It could be biological factors such as your genes or your brain chemistry. In that case, nothing you can do about it. It's just what it was. You were born that way. It could be due to life experiences. So if you've suffered abuse, let's say going back to Nigeria, for instance, if somebody was, say, a house help, some houses treat the house help very well. Some houses, they find it very traumatizing being in those houses, and that trauma will just follow you throughout life, and you'd find that your ability to handle stress will be impacted by that trauma that you've had in your early life. Also, family history with ties to the biological factors, your genes, we find that mental health problems can run in families. And then I put that last word there, eugenics, in there. So eugenics is it's a word that describes something that we practice actively in Nigeria, but we just don't think about. We didn't have a name for it. Now, I'm pretty sure in the East, in Igbo land, it happens, and I think in the West as well. But if you're getting married, you'd go to your family, you say you want to marry a girl or you want to marry a man if you're a woman, and your family will be like, okay, so which family is this person from? And then they go ask questions. And part of the questions they're asking, and the big deal out of the question they're asking is, oh, okay, do they act funny in that family? Do they go mad? Are they able to focus and do stuff? If you check every aspect of the questions they're asking about the mental health of that family that you're marrying into. And that's what we refer to as eugenics. Because even though we didn't have a fancy word for it back home, we knew that mental health problems could run in families. And we think this is why the incidence of mental health problems is not as crazy as it is out here in the West, as one of the theories. The other one, of course, is that living out here in the West can be quite stressful. But apart from schizophrenia, which is the madman we see walking on the streets, naked and all, we don't have as many of a mix of different mental health problems as we do out here in the West. And we suspect that this practice of eugenics is is the reason why this is so. So mental problems are common, but then it's good to mention that help is very available. And no matter what mental health problems that we find ourselves having, we're lucky we live in the 21st century with lots of advances in mental health where recovery can be either partial or complete. In other words, help is available. And this is also part of what we're mentioning while we're having this talk as well. Right, so jumping into early warning signs. This list is not exhaustive, but if we find that, I mean, we're all very busy in our day-to-day life. We have jobs, we have people to look after, immediate family, extended family. There's just a lot on our brains, and you're trying to keep your shit together. But finding that you're this busy doesn't mean that we don't notice there's something going on with a member of our family at some point in the continuum for when the problem is starting. So if we see any of these things in our kids, in our spouses, then we start to wonder, is something going on in my family here? So eating and sleeping too much or too little, if we see that, we start wondering what's going on with this person. Away from people and their usual activities. When we say usual activity, like in the day-to-day stuff that they do that they enjoy, maybe somebody comes back home, they like watching a particular show, or they like playing an instrument, or they want to play a video game, and they suddenly stop doing that. And you start to wonder, why isn't this person engaging in their usual hedonic activities, as we call it? People complain of having low energy or no energy at all, feeling numb, or like nothing matters. Having aches and pains that, it goes from the typical complaint to you're going to the ER, but they don't find anything. And they go like okay, well, we're testing for everything, but we're not seeing any of the symptoms that you're complaining of, right? Feelings of hopelessness. They just don't see the point in what they're doing. You'd find somebody's in a great job, work very hard to get there, and then he's suddenly not enjoying what he used to. He's not seeing the point in this job that you work so hard to get up to. Or feeling, like there's just no point to life. And then the smoking, drinking, and using drugs, as far as I'm concerned, there's not much wrong with that. But if you're doing it more than usual, then the question then goes, why are we doing this? Why are we using recreational drugs more than usual? So here in Canada, for instance, cannabis is legal, right? So if you take one toke a night and you're okay with it and it doesn't send you gaga, that's fine. But if you start taking more than usual or you're drinking more than usual, then you start to wonder what's going on with this person. Other symptoms could be, you'd find that the person is now very combative, always yelling, fighting with family members, complain that they're experiencing severe mood swings, feeling confused, feeling forgetful, always on edge or upset. And you know that this is far from the person's normal baseline. You start to wonder what's going on. Some having persistent thoughts and memories that they can't get out of their heads, especially if it's of a traumatic experience. In some extreme circumstances, complain that they're hearing voices or perhaps believing in things that are not exactly true, especially given the person's previous beliefs or cultural background. Also extreme, if they start thinking of harming themselves or harming others. Sometimes behavioral change, we've seen this in America, suicide by cop. You find somebody is thinking, oh my goodness, I just don't want to be here anymore. But they don't want to do it because, they're Christian, they believe life is sacred, but rather than doing themselves, they want to get into trouble and then pretend they have a gun so that the cops will shoot them. It's all suicide in the end, right? So if we have people thinking like that, your early warning bells start to go off. And then finally, an inability to perform daily tasks like taking care of your kids or getting to work or school. You find that things you used to do previously, all of a sudden, everything is just so much harder to do. These would be early warning signs that something is wrong. So if you're feeling this way, or your spouse is complaining of this, or even your kids, if they're old enough to explain these things, these are early warning signs that there's something wrong with the person's emotional and mental health at that point. So we talk about psychiatry, and sometimes we go, yeah, but what exactly are these problems? So I figured I'd just mention a few of the different psychiatric illnesses that we have. Anybody could have any of these things, but if we have a sense of what it is, then perhaps it helps with recognition to say, you know what, maybe I need help. I think this person might be suffering with this or that. But of course, you want to get the person to your family doctor as soon as possible to either make that presumptive diagnosis or refer the person to a psychiatrist or a psychologist to have a look. So quickly, I'm just going to run through these ones. So mood disorders. So your mood essentially refers to where you are emotionally at that time. And this would involve persistent feelings of, maybe sadness or periods of feeling overly happy. So they are both the mood. One is you're down and one is you're way too happy. And usually if you're way too happy, you can't tell yourself, but people around you go like, dude, you're kind of a bit too much, right? So, and the mood disorders it encompasses different diagnoses. So you could have a depression, you could have a bipolar affective disorder, as we call it, a seasonal affective disorder, or self-harm. Let me explain that very quickly. Depression essentially refers to when one feels very down. Now, do we feel down every once in a while? Yes. But is that a depression? Not necessarily. A depression is when it goes beyond that. When you get to the point where those symptoms I mentioned earlier, you're very down, you're not enjoying anything in life, maybe you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough, it's affecting your appetite, it's affecting your ability to plan, to reason, to function. Then you start looking at perhaps this is a depression. A bipolar affective disorder, it's just a fancy way of describing somebody whose mood is kind of like in opposites at different times. So bi means two, polar means, like north and south pole. So somebody that experiences horrible depressions, and then at different times they can become very manic or hypomanic, as we call it. In other words, their minds are just racing, and they find that they think they're Superman. They have plans to make $1 million out of $5, and they just can't sleep, and everybody's going like, dude, you're a bit too much, And sometimes it's so bad that it affects their ability to work, and then they have to be admitted. So that's what the bipolar affective disorder is. Seasonal affective disorder, it's not very common in the Black race. It's more experienced by people who are North American extraction. Usually what they find is that with the changes in the season, as the winter months start to come, they start to find their mood dropping. And when the weather improves, then they get back to feeling much better themselves. I'll touch on self-harm later on. So psychotic disorders. This is what made psychiatry the discipline in medicine that it is. It essentially describes somebody who, the word psychosis means that this person is experiencing emotions and different percepts that are different from what they should. In other words, what they're experiencing is not true, but it feels very real to them. And the range of things that you're experiencing that are unreal are defined by different things. So hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. So let me quickly describe a hallucination. So a hallucination is when you're experiencing something, but it's from internal, it's not from the external. So for instance, if there's of us in a room and I'm hearing somebody else, an 11th person talking to me in that room, but nobody else can hear that guy, well, something is wrong. So that's what we refer to as an auditory hallucination. And it can be fully formed like a conversation, or it can be primary sounds like you're hearing tapping on the wall, nobody else can hear it. It doesn't matter. It's still a sound that nobody else can hear but you. You can also have it in the form of visual hallucinations. You're seeing shadows moving. It could be gustatory, your taste, or olfactory. You're smelling things that are not really there. Now, these other ones that I've mentioned, apart from the auditory hallucinations, are not common. Most times it's the auditory one that we tend to find proliferates the most. A delusion is when you have a belief in something that is not really based on reality. So, for instance, if I suddenly start complaining that I'm pretty sure everybody in my office wants to kill me, but there's no evidence for that, or I start to believe that people are packed outside my house and they are coming and stealing stuff from me, but there's no evidence to any of these things, well, then that's what we refer to as a delusion, okay? And then disorganized thinking and behavior, we find that also in psychosis. So the person complains that the ability for clear thinking goes away. They can't seem to settle. They can't seem to put things in perspective. Something is going on in front of you, but you're just all over the place. And you can find evidence for this when the person is talking to you. So a lot of times through the speech, you can tell what's going on in the person's mind. The person starts talking to you. He starts talking about this green cup. And within 5 seconds, he's talking about a camera. And he goes from a camera to he's talking about a window and that his father visited him yesterday. So I've just described a sequence of 4 disjointed stuff that are not linked in any way. So if somebody is talking that way, it gives you evidence of how disjointed and disorganized that their thinking is. So examples of psychosis could be things like schizophrenia, which means that this person has an established psychosis that is just not going away unless he's treated and he stays on medication, right? It could also have a drug-induced psychosis. I remember the first one we saw was one of my friends then, when we were in AFMS, I think it was in our 4th year, and some boys went to, I think it was near Black Tank, and they were sharing Igbo around, and every other person was smoking, they were fine, and this guy took one, and he just wasn't right after that, you know? And so that's what we refer to as a drug-induced psychosis. They had to send him to the guard room. He was breaking the place down, and it was just unfortunate, but, you know, just bad luck for him. And then we could also have psychosis secondary to a mood disorder. So you might find this, an example of this would be a woman, for instance, that just had a baby, and because her hormones are all over the place, she gets very depressed. She starts to think there's something wrong with the child. She thinks the child is damaged, or the child is a devil's spawn, or some stuff like that. So that's a psychosis secondary to that very low mood, something we refer to as a postpartum depression, right? So that's an example of where you could have a psychosis secondary to a mood disorder, okay? Obsessive compulsive disorder, we refer to it as OCD. So this is when you have repeated upsetting thoughts that are called delusions. So an example of this, I have a bit of this, and I'm sure everybody has, not everybody, some people have this, but I know if I get very stressed, I start to, if I'm going to bed, I'm wondering, did I close that door? Then I get up and go and check again, right? Or you're walking away from your car and you're like, did I lock that car or not? And you go back and you're checking, you know? So that's a form of OCD. So the name OCD, obsessions, compulsions, the obsessions is that repetitive, intrusive thoughts that you just want to push away, while the compulsion bit is that thing that you do repeatedly to reduce your anxiety about the obsessional thinking that you're having. So sometimes it can come in the form of actions that you take, or it can come in the form of a thought process that you have. So maybe you have this terrible thought coming, and in your mind you go, okay, if I say something in a particular way, Jesus Christ's name, amen, 4 times, you feel better, right? That's a compulsive behavior. Okay. Trauma and stress-related disorders. The biggest one would be post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD as we call it. I'm sure we've all come across this in movies or in our personal lives. I always joke about AFMS. All of us are post-traumatic, but not the likes of Oga, Kaede, and the rest, because they don't know what we're talking about, right? But a traumatic event could be anything, really. It could be maybe even a victim of war, or you witnessed maybe a car accident, or you're a victim of or witnessed rape, anything like that. We find PTSD very commonly in people that's first responders, so firemen, policemen, sometimes emergency staff. So what is a trauma? What I described. But then when is it post-traumatic distress? Well, if you suddenly say you had an accident, right? And all of a sudden you can't stop thinking about that accident that you had. In clear daylight, you're having this intrusive memory of that accident you had, and it feels very real. It feels like you're reliving that experience all over again. Well, that's essentially one of the symptoms that we find in post-traumatic stress disorder. And it can be quite distressing at different levels. Sometimes it goes on its own. Sometimes it's so bad that you need therapy, or perhaps you need medication. And this, people that come from war zones, or if they've experienced maybe a flood or a fire or something, you tend to find areas that have had natural disasters. The number of PTSD cases kind of go up for a while, and then it starts to go down. Behavioral disorders. So this we find mostly in children. Like I said earlier on, mental health spans every part of the life continuum, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, and even into elderly years. So behavioral disorders they'd involve patterns of disruptive behaviors in children that last at least 6 months. If it's not up to 6 months, then according to the DSM-5 criteria, which is what we use to make all these diagnoses, then it's not really that diagnosis per se. And these problems can come up in different situations, social situations, in school or at home. And examples of this would be things like ADHD, that's attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So what this is essentially what the name is saying. There's an attention deficit in this child. They can't seem to concentrate on any one thing. They're just very disruptive. They're hyperactive. If we think back to when we're in primary school, most of us had that one classmate or two classmates that no matter what, they always get into trouble with the teacher. They would talk out of turn. They were the weird one that if you're choosing who to play with, nobody would choose them for their team because they just disrupted everything, right? And if the parents were kind of affluent, they might buy them, get a carpenter to build a single desk for them, and then they just sit in front of the class, in front of the teacher, because that's the only way they could pay attention, right? So that would be somebody that suffer with ADHD. Conduct disorder would refer to that kid that is very different from all his peers, from his siblings, always getting into trouble. It doesn't matter if his father is a priest or the Pope, he's just always in trouble. He will be the one that would be going to shoplift, even though he's from a rich family. He's the one that would be messing with the girls and pulling their hair and all that when we're in primary school, right? And what we find is that if those kids aren't attended to, if you don't give them some therapy, they're the ones that would transition from the conduct disorder as kids into something we call an antisocial personality disorder. They're the ones that just become very criminal-minded. They don't reason like the rest of us do, and they just trouble for society. And then oppositional defiant disorder. As a Nigerian, initially I was looking at this as this Oyibo man problem, If you're positional with your parents, they just conk your head and you snap out of it. But it's a real thing out here. It's just that kid that no matter what you're trying to tell them to do, they just will fight you on everything. They will not agree to your rules in the house. They will not do what you want them to do. And they respond to therapy as well. Eating disorders. So that's self-explanatory. There's two major types of it, anorexia and bulimia. Anorexia is essentially somebody that has a fear of food. In my opinion, this is mostly a disease of affluence. It was first noticed in Germany after the Second World War. The prisoners that were released, the Jewish prisoners that were released, they found that they were very skinny and you're trying to give them food and they couldn't eat anymore because their brains had been deprived of food for so long that it became a habit and it was very difficult to refeed them and a lot of them died. Fast forward to today, we find it mostly in girls, but it can also happen in boys. Mostly in young women, more than older women, sorry. And it's essentially a problem of people trying to meet those ideals that they see on TV. So the slim models, the good-looking person in their skinny jeans, and then the girl goes, oh, I want to look like that. And I want to start watching what I'm eating, watching my calories, start to exercise excessively. And then it goes on for so long that it becomes part of their signature. After a while, we notice that they start to lose weight to the point where, no matter what the weather is, they're cold. No matter what's happening, they're tired. And no matter how much you give them good food, they just want to eat. Now, this in psychiatry is the illness that has the highest mortality for us. So anytime we see such cases, these are the cases that we want to admit immediately because if it's not handled properly, they will starve to death. It's extreme, but that's what happens. Bulimia is more popular in the news and all. Examples of people that have had bulimia are people like Princess Diana, right? Bulimia essentially is a lower version of that anorexia. People that have bulimia, they also want to get their weight down, but they love food. And in their case, what happens is that they starve for a while, then they get so hungry and they just want to eat because they love food like everybody else, right? But then they eat more than they should. They feel guilty, then they go make themselves throw up. That can be very dangerous because you don't want what you're throwing up to get into your lungs because you could die. And it causes other problems, which I'm not going to get into here. But essentially, if you're not careful, that could get into anorexia. And then finally, binge eating. It's just somebody that struggles with food. They use food as a drug. They feel very unhappy. They start to eat a lot. They put on so much weight. They're not happy. They're all eating disorders. Anxiety disorders. We all suffer with anxiety at different times in our lives. You're chasing a girl on Gamu's Day, that's anxiety. You want to go racing, you want to jump out of a plane, that's anxiety. A senior wants to punish you, you're anxious. Anxiety is a natural part of the human psyche. It's what kept our forefathers alive. You see a lion, it's admiring you, you have anxiety, you go and hide, right? And then you have more children. So anxiety has kept the human race going all this while. The problem is when the anxiety goes beyond the normal, if you have anxiety, but there's no reason to have an anxiety, right? If you suddenly start feeling like, oh my goodness, man, I feel like I'm gonna die. I just can't think. I'm dreading everything, right? But there's no reason for that. Well, then you do have an anxiety disorder. If your job, they went to sack you, for instance, and you're anxious, that's fine. That's an appropriate response to what's happening to you. But if there's nothing going on and you're suffering such dread and anxiety, right? Or you're having a panic attack, which is I don't know if people have had panic attacks in the past, but essentially, a panic attack would be you experiencing extreme anxiety to the point where you feel like you're going to faint, your heart rate goes up, your legs turn to jelly sometimes, or maybe sounds a bit too loud for you. It comes with different symptoms for different guys, but a panic attack can come and go as part of an anxiety spectrum. So in essence, all these things I've described, which are out of the norm for the anxiety that you should feel, are what we refer to as anxiety disorders. And we deal with most of these. And we find, I think in psychiatry, it's what we find presenting the most. Phobias, I mentioned there very quickly. A phobia is you having a fear for a particular thing that is a bit beyond what it should be. We all have little phobias. Maybe phobia for snakes. Some people have phobias for heights. Some people have phobias for anything. Could be anything at all. But when that phobia is impacting on your ability for day-to-day living, the point where it's crippling what you're doing, well, then that's when it's getting into the whole mental health spectrum of phobias. Personality disorders, we deal with this as well. All of us have personalities. Our personality, apart from your face, which makes you unique, also adds to the unique signature that makes you who you are. However, when certain aspects of that, your personality, is causing you to have problems in your ability for relationships, ability to do your work, if you're a student, your ability to stay a normal student, then we refer to you as having a personality disorder. There are many personality disorders. They are under 3 headings. I'm not going to bore you with those ones, but I just picked out a few that I just mentioned briefly. Antisocial personality disorder would be one of them. So if I went, part of my work, I'd go to prisons to assess prisoners, right? If you went to the prison, about 85, 90% of people who are in prison have an antisocial personality disorder. These are people that, I mean, it's men and women, right? These are people that they just don't obey the norms of day-to-day life. They feel that the laws that you have is for you, not for me, right? They get into, because of that flaw in their personality, they're the ones that would, rather than have a relationship, they'd want to rape somebody, they'd want to steal from you for no good reason. They're the ones that will break into your place. They'd get into armed robbery, that kind of stuff, right? And then I mentioned a borderline personality disorder. Not very common in Africa, in Nigerians, and definitely not, even when it's there, it doesn't present the same way it presents out here. So these are people that have such difficulty with their personality, that they feel that they can't fit in with everybody else. They engage in behaviors that are self-destructive. So it's mostly in women, but you can find it in men as well. You'd find them engaging in things like cutting themselves when they are upset. They would sabotage their relationships. Let's say a girl is dating one of you gentlemen, and you're not given any reason to think that you're going to leave her, but in her mind, she's very sure that she's not worthy, she's not good enough, and half the time she's pretty sure you're about to leave her. And because of that, part of her behavior is that she'll be sabotaging that relationship, and you're wondering what's wrong with you, right? Here, they can get so bad that they essentially use more drugs. They'd be trying to hang themselves, and you just go, what's wrong with this person? But you don't see any true psychosis, you don't see any true depression, you don't see any true trauma per se, right? Likely this might be somebody suffering a borderline personality disorder. So I put this here, suicidal behavior, because even though it's not common, it wasn't common in our time, it's getting more common in Nigeria. We live out here now, so our kids are exposed to kids from this area, and we see more and more money is being pumped into mental health because people are dying of suicide. So what I highlighted there is so true. suicide causes immeasurable pain, suffering to families and communities worldwide. When we lose any member of our family to suicide, there's always this guilt everybody faces, like, what did I miss? Why didn't I help? Why didn't this person come to me? Whether it's a brother, sister, a wife, a husband, or a very close friend, like, why didn't I see what was happening? That's how traumatic suicide can be. And sometimes a suicide can trigger multiple suicides in the society as you know it. We'll call that a cluster of deaths due to suicide. Now, what are the things that we would look for that tells us that, oh my goodness, man, let's watch this individual. Maybe they're thinking of committing suicide if they're not announcing it themselves? Well, if somebody you know starts looking for ways to kill oneself, or talking about wanting to die, or talking about feelings of hopelessness and having no reason to live, talking about being a burden to everybody else, you start to wonder, why is saying that, talking about feeling trapped or being in unbearable pain, especially psychic, if you find that there are increase of use of drugs and alcohol, if it's just beyond what they normally would use, you start to wonder what's going on. Acting in an agitated or anxious way, or they start to become very reckless. They get into, maybe you go to a club with somebody and the person's been down and a bit introspective, and then they start getting into fights with people looking for who will kill them. Do you know what I mean? You start to wonder about this. In some cases, you'd find that the person is withdrawing. And when I say withdrawing from everybody else, like, this person used to be very engaging, he used to come for meetings, he wouldn't go out much anymore. He's not saying much about himself, or complain the person's isolated, right? Even though, there's a whole family around you, then you start to wonder, right? In some cases, they can be displaying extreme mood swings, going from, everything is just pissing them off, right? Or maybe they're showing rage, or talking about looking to go seek for revenge. These are things if you see these things, they don't necessarily mean this suicidal behavior, but in the background, if you find that this person has just been despondent and low and any of these things, and this list is not exhaustive, then you start to wonder, am I dealing with somebody in my family or my friend who I think might be suicidal? If any of these things, if you're second guessing yourself, well, I always say this, get help immediately. That's why I figured I'd just put this up here. So we've been talking about all the bad news. Well, let's talk about recovery, right? So the first thing I'll say is, no matter where anybody is in that continuum for mental health or emotional distress in their lives, recovery is possible. The one thing I'll say about recovery is that the sooner one recognizes what's going on, the sooner a diagnosis is made, and the faster the recovery can be, or the better the recovery can be. So I just put these vignettes up there, just simply talking about what I've been saying earlier, plus now. It's a process, going through recovery. When we're going through that recovery continuum, we find certain things are changing. That spiral that you're on starts to slow and reverse. So you find there's an improvement in your health and wellness. You find that you go from that spiral to trying to achieve more of your full potential. And you find that it's easier for you if you're coming out of that spiral, because that spiral it's a representation of you losing control of aspects of your life, right? But if you start getting into a recovery mode, you find that you now have a more self-directed life. So that's why recovery is so important. And I saw this when I was talking through my residence one time. 4 dimensions of recovery. It's not all-encompassing, but it helps to formulate the idea of what recovery can look like, okay? So health, it helps with making informed decisions, healthy choices that support physical and emotional well-being. We find that one, having a stable home or stable relationship is really, really helpful with recovery compared to somebody who was living alone or was living on the streets. It's difficult to get your shit together, forgive my language. But if you have a stable home, if you have support from your loved ones, it really makes a difference for being in that recovery mode. Purpose, you find that with recovery, you engage in meaningful life activities like your job, if you're a student, the ability to care for your family, or if you're in the creative arts, you're able to get back into that. And then community, very helpful. This talk, for instance, we're all brothers, we're all from the same area. If it's your church, for instance, or your community as a Black man, whatever, we find that community makes a big difference in several ways. One, identifying there's something wrong with you. Sometimes you can't tell what's happening with you. We call that the ability for having insight. Sometimes you don't see it, but because you have a community, they go like, hey, brother Ayo, brother Kaide, how far now? Let's talk. Is there any problem, right? So recognition, community will help you with that. Also, the ability to take you to help, the ability to do an intervention, and the ability for you to feel that sense of belonging because you know that this community loves you and are watching out for your well-being. These are the things that community can do for you as part of that move towards recovery. Developing a recovery plan, it's different for different people, but essentially, if you're struggling, for some people, having a written plan really helps. You're seeing a doctor, you're seeing a psychiatrist, you're seeing a psychologist. But if you don't have a plan for what you can do to contribute to that recovery process, then that means you're not engaging as much. And that means that your recovery is not going to be as fast as it should be. The proverbial, you can take a donkey to the river, but you can't make it drink. It's so true. If I'm asking somebody to go and get help, well, you walk into a room for therapy or you go to take a medication, it doesn't really matter what's going on unless you are involved in that. So you being involved in that recovery plan and developing it is really, really important to help you do better. And it's not just mental health. Let's say you have an accident and it affects your ability to walk. Well, you go see a physiotherapist because you want to walk, right? In this case, what we find in mental health is that because of the stigma involved, people aren't as engaged to try and recover as much as me trying to get back on my feet to walking again, right? So we always highlight that please, as much as possible, get involved. Tell us what your plan is in addition to what we're doing for you so that engagement makes your recovery so much better. So these things I wrote out here help if you have a written recovery plan. It enables you to identify your goals. It helps you to be specific in what you're trying to achieve within that recovery. It includes your daily activities, which tells you as you're improving that, okay, previously I wasn't enjoying playing my guitar, I'm back to playing that. It tells me that, okay, previously I used to watch my movies when I got back. I haven't watched a movie in a year and I'm getting back to that. So you're looking for targeted improvements, right? And it's not just this whole thing of, I'm never getting better. You know you're getting better because you can identify those things that you used to enjoy before and it's coming back into your life. Your ability to track any changes in your mental health. If you're able to do that, that means that your ability for having an insight is improving. So that's also part of the recovery. Identifying triggers that make other stressful events worse is very important. We all have periods in our lives where we're so stressed out and we have triggers that just make us burn or just explode. We don't think much about it, but it happens. I'll give a very quick example. So let's say you're in a very stressful job and you have a very stressful boss. but you've got responsibilities. You have to pay the rent, you have to pay the mortgage, you have to pay for the car, whatever. You have to look after your loved ones back in Nigeria. You can't afford to lose that job. So you just keeping your shit together at work. You finish the job, thank God, you punch out, you get into the car, you're going home, you're still stressed out, but you're driving very carefully because you don't want to get a ticket, you don't want the cops to harass you, you don't want to scratch your car, so you just holding it all together. And you go home and your dog is happy to see you, and it comes to you and just jumps on you and gets your shit dirty. And you kick the dog. The dog is not your problem. The dog is just that last trigger that you just kicked. But essentially, it was just a trigger for you, and it's all that anxiety from the whole day just going on to the bloody dog. As part of that recovery thing as well, it's good to have information about sources of recovery or having access to what to even do in the first place, like in going to your family doctor or finding a therapist or being referred to mental health or psychiatry. Having access to that information is really, really good as part of the recovery. And then finally, if things are really bad and we can't fix this by just sessions, then we might be looking at using medication or therapy in the form of psychotherapy. Personally, in my practice, as much as possible, we try to fix things using the natural process. But if the mental illness is such that there's an imbalance in the brain, well, then we just have to fix that imbalance. So we'll be looking at using medications for that. And it could be medication tailored to what's wrong with you. So if you have a depression, an antidepressant to be used. If it's a psychosis, an antipsychotic. And if it's an anxiety disorder, then we'll look at using medications for that. So in essence, that's what recovery is about. And I think that should be my last slide. Yes. So I would invite Dr. Flo or Wole to add to anything we just talked about. And then before we start the Q&As, I know Ayo got some questions, and so you can also read out the questions, but I would really encourage us to ask questions because what I described is so not exhaustive at all. There's so many different problems that we have from a mental point of view, and it's good to have as many questions as possible so we can just meet some of those and describe things. No question is silly, no question is stupid, I always say. Thank you very much.
That was amazing, Dr. Ogo. Dr. Wole, I think I don't have anything in particular to add. So I'll yield the floor to you to maybe say a few words before we get into Q&A.
I think Dr. Ogo did a good job of saying all that needs to be said in within that short time frame. I would just like to maybe highlight a few things that he said. One of the things that he said was that mental illness is essentially a brain disease. So in Yoruba, they say "Arun Opolo." It still sounds kind of stigmatizing, even when we say it's "Arun Opolo," because of the stigma that comes with it. But the brain is an organ, just like your liver, your heart, your pancreas, it's an organ, just like it's you can touch it, you can, it's a functioning organ. It's just very unique in the sense that it has this ability to create emotions and drive behaviors. So, and so it can break, just like your heart can break, your the pancreas can break, your liver can break, your kidneys can break, your skin can break. It can break, and there's nothing to be ashamed about, and the beauty of it is just the way it can break, it can be fixed. And that's why, a significant proportion of Dr. Ogo's presentation was kind of geared towards recovery. Recovery is possible. I remember one of the most, the most impacting effect that my psychiatry rotation in medical school did for me was when I saw a psychotic person respond to medication. That just blew my mind. Someone who was yelling, hearing voices, seeing things totally disorganized. They gave her medications. Within a few days, she was back to her senses, appreciating us for what we did and everything. I was like, what? This is possible. Same goes for depression. Same goes for anxiety. So folks, it's an organ. The brain is an organ. It can break. And, he talked about the spectrum from children. Our children can be affected. Adults can be affected. The elderly can be affected. I think that was one aspect that maybe he didn't touch on because, of course, this is huge, is dementia, neurocognitive disorders, as you grow older, the brain can break down and you can have, neurocognitive disorders, dementias and stuff like that. And that can sometimes be a great challenge, something really hard to handle. Parkinson's has a psychiatric component to it. So, but you can get better. So don't let the stigma that we all, have with us from coming from Nigeria, coming from the cultural background that we all come from, stop you from seeking help for your kids, for yourself, for a loved one. That's just what I'd like to add to what he already shared. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Wale. So that's great. I will only say just a little bit around the spiritual component as well. I think our background, and I typically say this often, I said, we have a lot to learn, a lot to unlearn, and a lot to relearn. And I just encourage all of us, as we're talking through some of the Q&A, let's be reflective. You might disagree, maybe, with the responses or maybe the point of view, but I ask that you hold either judgment and I ask that you hold your point of view and just allow the responses to just allow your heart to take the information that you're hearing. And let's deal with countering arguments at a later time. But for now, let's use this opportunity to learn, to really allow ourselves to be challenged with what we've learned that we need to relearn. And that's really how growth happens. So with that said, we're going to jump into the Q&A session. And I know a lot of folks have questions. So I believe we have some that have been written in already. So let's start with those. Ayo, do you have a couple that you want us to start with in particular?
Yes, I do. Okay, so we will roll out the questions. If you have questions to ask the panelists, you could either type it at the comment section, at the chat section, or you could raise your hand, virtually, and we could take live questions. While I also just have a mismatch of questions that came in within the past weeks and days leading up to the seminar. So please feel free to drop in the questions at the chat section of this platform. But I'll start with the first question. So we have a number of questions that came in the past week. The first was, it appears mental health is used loosely these days, especially during this COVID period. What has changed in recent times compared to the past when mental health was not as common or only used in severe mental cases? Has the world become more prone or vulnerable to mental health? What is driving this shift? Any of the panelists could take on these questions.
Do you want to take this, Wale?
You want me to take it?
I don't mind.
Oh, but what did you say? I thought you.
I was wondering, do you want to take that question? Or?
Sure, I can take it. So, it's not. Yeah. So, I would challenge the notion that it's used loosely. I think that's possibly the way the perception of the person who is asking this question. Now, mental health has always been an issue historically. It's been it's people ended up in jails. It's still happening right now, like Dr. Ogo mentioned. Like up to 60 to 80% of people in jail have this antisocial personality disorder, which if you got them treated earlier in their lifetime, you know, when they were having the ODD and the conduct disorder, they probably wouldn't turn up in jail. So, but historically, mental health was was classified as, I'm trying to remember the word now, like it's like a poor man's thing. So they relegated them to the worst part of society, of the city. You know, the church, or you know, served them. You know, so, and it wasn't considered a disease. At another point in history, it was considered a spiritual phenomenon. And that's, you know, just reflects the evolution of the science of the mind, of the brain. So over the years, there has been more studying from Eugene Blula and, you know, the rest of them about 2 centuries ago now, you know, gradually looking like this. There's medical understanding. You know, it used to be where you couldn't touch the brain, even you could not open the body, right? It was like really, what are you doing opening the body? And then people started opening the body and studying the heart and all the other organs, but you don't touch the brain, you know. And then people started opening the brain, and you know, people started explaining that, you know, psychosis or depression, you know, can be explained by chemicals. And then, you know, this became a mainstream accepted idea. And then we started finding medications that helped with depression, you know, start finding medications that help with anxiety. All these are still very recent, like within the last, you know, 30, 40 years with regards to depression and anxiety. So, you know, and then we started seeing, oh my God, people do get better. Like there are chemicals in the brains, there are structural abnormalities that do lead to these things. So it's becoming more accepted as a disease, as a medical disease. And that's probably why we're seeing it more used, or more coming more to the forefront, as opposed to being pushed back in society to just, these are just unfortunate people, or people that have offended God, or, you know, stuff like that. So I think that's what it is. It's not so much. I think there's an argument also for that, for the fact that there could be increasing incidence of certain types of mental illness because of the unique stress that industrialization, you know, the internet age and stuff brings to on human race. So, but most of it is more of advances in medical science with specific regards to understanding more about the brain and the mind. I'll let maybe other people kind of pitch in as to their other panelists pitching as to their understanding and perspective on that.
I totally agree with that. And just to add to that as well, I think part of what it is there's more spending going on now in mental health than ever before. So there's more awareness. There's a budget towards awareness now as well. So it's not an imagined thing. It's more in the discourse. It's being discussed by politicians more now. So if there's a campaign, they talk about that. I know where I live, for instance, we used to have a Minister of Health. But for the first time, we now have a Minister of Health and then a Minister of Mental Health, which is also showing you that there's more spending going on. And it's one of those funny things in life, but you know, we're just fortunate we went into it. But we think even in medicine, the spend for pharmaceuticals and all whatnot, it's going more into, you know, studies for the brain, medications for the brain. So there's a lot going on now, and especially in the advanced world. And some of these things tend to filter back home quicker. So yeah, you're not imagining things. It's talked about more, maybe a bit loosely, but at the same time, it's a thing. It's a recognition. We all know, for instance, the Republicans are using it more. If there's a shootout somewhere, they go, rather than taking the drugs, the guns off, they go, well, you know, mental health. This person wasn't feeling right. So all these reasons, it's coming to the forefront more and more now, and we see it in mental health as well. I don't know about you, Ayo, but I know I've been seeing salaries for psychiatrists just going crazy. So it's just that need. So yeah.
No, for sure, you will know better about the salary part. But
I think I agree. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Ogo.
I don't know. I was just making a joke.
Okay. No, I think you both are spot on. I mean, you guys are clearly in that field of psychiatry. The other thing that I want to actually also bring to that conversation is there's a generational push as well. I think generationally we're seeing the millennials, which is the largest block of folks in the workforce, be more vulnerable and more open with their life, right? And then we also have the generation after them who literally grew up with the internet. So in their mind, I mean, you have instances where people are video, how do you call it now? They're doing video conferencing of their suicide attempts. They're doing all kinds of, they're publicizing a lot of some of these things that most of us were taught to hide or not to even bring up to the surface. And a classic example is Naomi Osaka, right? Who's actually Black and as well as Asian. And, you know, in the Asian community, they don't even talk about mental health or anything at all. So we're seeing kind of a continuum in terms of generation, conversation, and also that we were all locked up during COVID. Didn't help anybody. And I think for all of us, at some point, we all felt the stress of being home and staying home. And I think it just seemed to be the right time. And I would say we just need to continue to embrace it as well. So just a few points to add into you guys' brilliant addition.
I have to join in very quickly and say this is the beauty of psychologists compared to psychiatrists is psychologists are gentlemen and psychiatrists were just drug dealers. So
so that's a perfect lead into the next question, actually. But just a quick comment before the next question. I think, all three of you have spoken, nicely about, what could potentially be driving this shift that we're seeing. But another thing again is like, from our standpoint, we've seen that cliche of mental health being used a number of times. Maybe in the industry as well, we've seen like spikes in absenteeism even during this especially during this period. And interestingly, to a large extent, we're seeing most of the reasons coming in from mental health. So it leads us to the next question: that who should I talk to? Psychiatrist or psychologist or family doctor? How do I determine who I need to speak to?
I'll take this one very quickly. So I always say this, it depends on where you're at in that continuum of difficulty you have. If somebody is so obviously psychotic, right? Well, definitely, get him to the family doctor as quick as possible so that referral can be made to a psychiatrist, so he's seen. If, however, it's something not as difficult, maybe garden variety neurosis like anxiety and stuff like that, you could still see a family doc or you could see a therapist. Or if you think that it's getting to the point where it's so disabling, then perhaps a psychiatrist should come on. But the gateway would always be the family doc. That's what they're called here, right? I know they're called GPs in the UK, right? It's family doctors here. Yeah. So the family doctor will be the gateway into any and all specialties in medicine. And I would say that would be the first port of call. But even before then, talking to your mate, your friend will make a big difference. And then if the person feels that, yep, this is beyond what you and I can discuss and figure out, well, then definitely going to your family doctor will be advised.
Excellent. Wale, you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think the UK and the Canadian health system is differently structured. The United States healthcare system is a little bit, what's the word now? Fragmented.
Draconian.
So actually, you can, as opposed to primary care being you needing a referral from your primary care physician, you can approach a psychiatrist, directly here. Although most case like family physicians see about 60 to 80% of psychiatric cases anyways, but you don't have to go through your family care provider or primary care provider to be able to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. In fact, that might go a longer route. Like that might take like 6 months if you did that, as opposed to, you can, go to your psychiatrist directly and try to get in, which typically takes 1 to 2 months anyways, unless, you have some, so yeah, I just wanted to add that bit for those of us who are in the United States.
Yeah, just one last thing. If it's an emergency, definitely going to the ER is another fast way to get access to a psychiatrist.
Absolutely.
How do psychologists come in though? Or at what point do they come in?
So let me quickly interject. So there is some place for, I know the doctors are focused heavily on recovery, diagnosis. Oftentimes with the psychologist, we encourage dialogue, right? Even before you know what the issue is, we recommend, we encourage, we invite dialogue. And I think most organizations in the US actually have wellness programs. And with those wellness programs, I believe about a good number of the organizations have actually doubled the amount of post-tax dollars you can spend. And if you go to any one of your websites, they will have lists of psychologists, they will have lists of therapists, they'll have lists of massage therapists, they'll have lists of all kinds of wellness services that you can actually even just get by virtue of working for those firms. And I want to encourage us to please take advantage of those services. The stigma is actually now dropping. There is nothing wrong with saying, I need some break, I need to talk to somebody. And if you're still embarrassed about it, find people like myself that can help you have those conversations as well. But we come in, Ayo, in some instances, we come in a little bit before things fall off the cliff. In terms of mentally, we're there to help you kind of provide some boundaries and help you affirm yourself and get stronger mentally. So
a quick addition. So I think one of the things that many people, permit me to say, uninitiated folks struggle with is what's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? So I think that might be a side question here. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, like Dr. Ugo said earlier. We deal drugs, so we prescribe you medication. So although we train in psychology and we can do talk therapy, that's not our primary responsibility. So our primary responsibility in most healthcare systems is to write you a prescription or send you to a therapist, as the case may be. So the psychologist, on the other hand, typically doesn't write prescriptions. They do talk therapy. They talk to you, like Dr. Flo has shared. So they don't write prescriptions. I said typically because now in the United States, a couple of states started having psychologists take psychopharmacotherapy classes and granting them the license to write prescriptions, non-controlled prescriptions, because of the shortage of psychiatrists in those states. So, but generally speaking, in most healthcare systems and in most of the states in the United States, psychologists talk to you, psychiatrists treat you with medications and also do a little bit of talking.
To add to that as well, the psychologists, they do a lot of psychometric testing that helps with determining what's wrong with somebody. So remember, Wale talked about the brain and brain disease. A psychologist would be somebody who is highly trained, will probably have to go to PhD level. And I know there's two streams. There's research stream and then there's a clinical stream. So they'd be very highly skilled in the therapy, in all the different therapies, as well as the psychometric testing to see what's happening, what are the deficits in this brain, what are the difficulties that this brain is experiencing, And even if you go into the criminal justice system, what are the problems that this person has with his day-to-day life or abilities for day living that make them weird and wonderful. So it's not just, talking to you. It's a very broad, very specialized and unique practice. Jesus, they do quite a lot.
Well, thank you all the panelists for the answers to these questions. I think clearly we know now to talk to Dr. Flo first before we talk.
I was hoping that won't be the case, but hey.
All right. Okay, so a couple of questions came through the chat section. One from Ogake. His question is, apart from the psychiatrist and psychologist, are there other mental health counselors that one could go to? And what specialization fields allow mental health counseling?
Yeah, so mental health is made up of so many gardens. We've mentioned therapy, talking therapies, right? A lot. There are different therapies that you can access. It could be through it could be just good old getting advice. It could be you getting therapies that are a bit more specialized, something like cognitive behavioral therapy or psychodynamic therapy, right? Some of these therapies could be done by a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a trained therapist. And that trained therapist could be anybody. It could be somebody in this room that has an interest and you want to go learn how to do certain therapies like CBT, for instance, or family therapy. Most of the practitioners tend to be perhaps speech and language therapists. It could be maybe somebody in occupational therapy that could help you with that. It could be maybe somebody working in eating disorder, right? A dietitian who has an interest in eating disorders, and they would help to do therapies towards that eating disorder. So it might sound fragmented, but it's all under what we refer to as a multidisciplinary team that you can approach. And yes, usually the psychiatrist might be the leader of that multidisciplinary team, but we would easily and very quickly apportion you to those different therapists or practitioners of the therapy that you would need. I don't know if that's a good answer to the question.
Yes, I suppose it is. Ogake just gave confirmation. He also asked, what does the psychiatrist nurse practitioner do differently?
You want to take this, Wally?
Yeah, I will wager it might differ from country to country, but the psychiatric nurse practitioner in the United States does basically everything that the psychiatrist does, although this is usually a hot point of hot debate. Although, so the reality is they have significantly less training than psychiatrists, MDs. So I have seen nurse practitioners that after like a decade of practicing, they have the knowledge and the skill of a psychiatrist. So, but my personal experience and just from the objective evidence of how long time they've spent in training is that they are able to offer a little bit less quality service, especially in complex cases. With the really simple anxiety, depression, they can handle that. They can handle that very, very efficiently, not any less than a psychiatrist would. But when there are complex cases, if it's not a nurse practitioner that has been in practice under a psychiatrist for a long time, I'll kind of, I'm assuming you're asking this question because you're considering, okay, if I want to see a psychiatrist and they offer me a nurse practitioner, do I take them? So because I'm always thinking about the application, the practical application of questions like this. So that will be my answer to it. Now here, from state to state, the laws differ. So for example, some states allow nurse practitioners to prescribe controlled substances. some of these controlled substances can be very integral to you getting better. So some of the states don't allow the nurse practitioners to prescribe controlled substances at all. And then some of the states allow the nurse practitioners prescribe the controlled substances only with their supervising physician's ratification. So again, I'll wager it differs from country to country, because even here it differs from state to state. So, but basically that's it. A psychiatric nurse practitioner can prescribe medication just like a physician, psychiatrist, though they have significantly less training than a psychiatrist.
I will agree 100% with what Wole is saying. And in some countries, they can't do that. In Europe, this is an American-led thing. And you could say that it's a cynical push towards trying to get access to people where you don't have enough psychiatrists, right? So, but in some states as well, it's a push towards saving money. Either way, they don't have anywhere near the training for the complexities of what these medications can do. However, you might find that nurse practitioner has worked psychiatrist for 10, 20 years. She's seen most of what's going on. And they do a fair enough job, but it's just that when a case is really complex, giving medication isn't just giving it to make you feel better. You have to, as a doctor, think, this medication, what side effects does it have? Which medications are going to interact with to create a new problem? Essentially, like I said, we're drug dealers. What we're doing with drugs is we're trying to make sure that in this chemical mix called the brain that we're training this into, right, that we're not going to create more problems with the interaction of drugs that shouldn't be anywhere near each other, right? And the fact that you're in front of us is that you already have a problem. So our first oath is first cause no harm, right? And if I cause you harm, I expect you to sue the hell out of me and get my license. So when they start pushing this towards nurse practitioners who, through no fault of theirs, but they just don't have the training and the ability to sit back and think about these interactions very well, it gets a bit messy.
All right. Thanks to the both of you for your answers to that question. Ogaki, I think that will help your career change discussion. All right. We've got a question from Oga Goss, and I think this ties to a question that came through last week. The question is, what if we are dealing with a family member who has been diagnosed by a psychiatrist as depressive, yet they have refused to get help? What should you advise we do? What's the next step of action? That applies to friends. I think the question that came through last week was on friends, but friends and loved ones, relatives, I think that could be put in the same bracket.
Okay, let me try and take this. So this person has been diagnosed, has a mental illness, perhaps depression. So a lot of what we do in psychiatry, we look at it from the ethics point of view, right? So we all have rights. And I have the right to refuse anything you're asking me to do. That's where the rights, that's where the ethics is. But at the same time, that if this person isn't taking treatment appropriately, then it's just going to get worse. Or unfortunately, if it's the kind of mental illness that can lead to mortality, then the person might die. So in the case of somebody who's depressed, we're dealing with depression now, but if you don't do anything about it, you might progress to suicidality and kill yourself, right? So when you go to the ethical fundamentals of everything, so it's kind of like in somebody who needs a blood transfusion and you're Jehovah's Witness and you can't take a blood transfusion, right? But as a doctor in front of you, depending on the state you're in, you have to do something about it. The reason I went in this direction is taking it back to the friend who is wondering what to do. This is your friend or your family member, and that if you don't do anything, or if you don't convince this individual to go take treatment, they're going to get worse. So what you can do thinking of this ethical dilemma is involve somebody else if you can. If you're good at, if you're like, of the kind I can talk you into jumping off a building, talk the person, convince the person on why they need that help. If you think you don't have that ability, get somebody who's better at talking than you are. Try and reason with the person. Do not threaten the person. If you don't do this, therefore this. No, it doesn't work because the person is where he's at his mind right now. He's not even listening to you, right? So it's all about trying to convince the person. If it's not working with you and the other person, an intervention could help as well. Maybe talking to your doctor to talk to the person. Some people there's something we call the white coat syndrome, right? Some people just prefer hearing things from a doctor. If the person in front of me, I'm saying to you, dude, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Whether you do it or not, I get paid. So I'm just telling you, you got to do this. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes they respond better to a doctor or a therapist or a nurse. But what?
Huh?
Sorry? Okay, I don't know. So yeah, so whatever works for that person, explore it. But definitely, I don't know if that's a good answer, but I'm just trying to say that it's everybody's responsibility to look after everybody. And whatever works in that individual case, so be it. We don't care, just let the person get help.
All right. I'd like to also weigh in. So I mean, my summary of what he just shared is determine why is the person not getting help? And then address the why, so, and the why can be so varied. So for people who are depressed, for example, it could be just the symptom of one of the symptoms of depression is you just don't want to do anything. There's no zest for nothing. So going to the doctor feels like a huge task. They're no longer interested in life. You can get that severe. So there's no point even in getting treatment. So if it's that, then, you've got to get, a lot of persuasion in and get them out to go see the doctor. Sometimes it might be that, they're already thinking of ending it. They're already having suicidal ideations. In that case, you're not talking. Here we're calling the police. I don't know how it works in Canada or the UK. Here we're calling the cops. Actually, okay. I just had a case of just about 7-8 days ago, like with my extended family member here in the United States, that I had to call the cops to come, get them to the hospital. And he was talking about different levels of the legal aspects of taking away people's rights. At that point, you can take away their rights and force treatment, as the case may be. So, because that's a life or death situation and they're not making the right decision. So, but things ranging also from not that severe to things like stigma can prevent people from going. Like I'm going to go talking about my emotions. No, I don't want to go. Or misunderstanding. Some people don't know that you can get better. So in my medical school, 4th year was psychopharmacology. The director of psychopharmacology, when she was teaching us, she was teaching us pharmacology. I'm sorry. She was teaching us psychopharmacology. When we got to talking about medications that treated mental illness, she opened that lecture. I cannot forget. She opened that lecture with, only people who are called by God should go to psychiatry because none of these medications work. So she just said, and I already knew that I wanted to do psychiatry from my 200 level. So I was like, oh God, did God call me? I'm starting to check my conviction there. So, and that's probably why my first experience during my clinical rotation on the psychiatric ward actually was like very, very mind-blowing for me, because this is not just someone with depression and anxiety, but someone with one of the worst diseases we have in psychiatry, a full-blown psychotic disorder who responded perfectly to medication. I was like, what? So people have misperception, even people who are educated. I'm telling you, people who are highly educated in other aspects of society, including physicians who are not psychiatrists, you'll be surprised, have misunderstanding, misperceptions about psychiatry, about mental illness, about its treatability. So you might have your friend or your family member who doesn't really think that there is a solution to what they're going through. They don't know. So I think, primarily getting at, why doesn't the person want to go? Like, why are they not motivated to go? What's really going on there? And focusing your intervention on why don't they want to go? So I think, will be a summary of the approach.
Yeah. A lot of times it's stigma.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Great. I think great responses from the both of you. Dr. Flo could also just chime in on this, because I think there's always that reservation of encroaching into someone's space. That's one. And then there's also that like you mentioned, the stigma, and in some cases the reluctance to just want to seek help. I'm glad that you pointed out the option of actually calling the police. We've had some experience. Like, I personally had an experience where recently this year, where my neighbor actually OD'd. In previous months we had talked about mental health. He had told me he was depressed, but this is someone that swings between both extremes. Like, I think Dr. Ogo mentioned, like, that bipolar. So one minute he's extremely ecstatic, the next minute is locked indoors for like weeks without any sight of him. And then the next thing we knew was, the ambulance in our area, taking his corpse out of the building. So that guilt of not reaching out to him, that guilt of not doing all that I potentially could have done, it traumatized me for a while. And so I'm glad that you kind of explored multiple options that we have in seeking help. If he's not willing to take the help that we're offering, I'm glad that you could also have that alternative of calling the police and getting the help with or without consideration of his rights. Dr. Flo, I don't know if you have anything to chime in on this question.
That question is so loaded, and I must say that the first thing that we need to be very conscious of is this sense of guilt, as well as the limitation of what we can control. When it comes to someone else's life, there's only so much we can do without express permission. And I think in environments where there are stronger legal constraints, like in the US, UK, and Europe, you are quickly told kind of the limit of what you can do and what you can't do, right? You have instances where people who are perhaps some of our colleagues who are hooked on some of these items, and they will tell you when they're mentally okay that it's not your responsibility, it's not your business. And so we have to embrace the fact that there are limitations. Now, to the question that Oga Goss asked, I think in Nigeria and Africa, there is also this premise of there's a stronger spiritual component that people, we for whatever reason, we go a little bit overboard, right? So you find people who are expressing certain things from a mental standpoint who will only pray about it, right? So, but then the way I present insights to people is to say, look, we can come at this from many different angles. You're coming from a spiritual angle by praying, by confessing, by seeking to cast out the spirit and what have you. That's fine. There's an angle to that. There's also a mental piece to it, but there's also even a medical component to it as well. And so, the advice I'll provide is to say, if you have people who are in this kind of situation, and the family is either seeking or choosing not to seek advice, give them insight. Just continue to share information with them. If you're giving to prayers, keep them in your prayers as well, because sometimes knowledge is a continuum as well. They will come around to it when they eventually, hopefully it's not too late, but when they eventually are convinced about what you're saying. And so even if you say the first time, don't quit, don't give up, because help is always, I say help is a verb and it's always active. So as long as you can provide help, be it subtle or actual, please continue to do so. And lastly, I would just say that this is sometimes some of the mental battles that we all face and people face. Those are not strong, they're stronghold. They're not easy things to defeat. And so before we get into kind of trying to counter, I really say this a bit. I say, please make sure that you're going to build rest to your brain and you're going to build good habits, because build yourself for the long haul rather than waiting for when the brain either takes a break or is about to break down before you seek help. Put into your routine mental breaks, especially for us who come from Africa. We have a lot that we're carrying. We've got parents, we've got cousins, we've got community, we've got children, we've got spouse, and it could be a lot, right? So let's learn to appreciate the heavy load that we carry, and please take breaks. I know that you're not Superman or Superwoman. You can't solve the world's problems, and embrace that, and then be okay with that. Sorry, I kind of went over there a little bit, but I hope that was helpful as well.
Oh, great, Dr. Flo. That was really helpful. Thanks for that remark and that response to the question. Okay, so we're going to move on to other questions that have come in on the chat section. This question came from Ogatosi. At what point will personal pressure level require a mental health check without sounding like an alarmist, taking into consideration that a typical Nigerian's daily activity could be very stressful? Or have you guys gone soft abroad?
You should also add that Tosin is in Lagos.
That's correct. So glad you could join the session. Tosin.
So that we can have the right perspective.
That's right. And please, you feel free to drop questions on the chat section or just raise your hand virtually, and then we could call you on to take your question.
Yeah. So
the panelists could address this question, please.
Yeah. So mental health is a very, very interesting field because it deals with thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and that the norm. So we all behave, we all think, we all have feelings, and the unique thing is, so with blood pressure, for example, there's also a range. So there's a range of behavior, a range of feelings, a range of all, but with blood pressure or physical medicine, there's also a range. Your potassium level has a range of normal. Your sodium level has a range of normal. Your blood pressure has a range of normal. But with mental health, that range of normal is not so fixed. It's not so defined as in physical health, physical medicine, because it is affected by your own personal resilience, personal factors. It's affected by society, societal norms. It's affected by religion. It's affected by a lot of things. So what will be totally normal behavior in one culture, will be totally abnormal in another culture. If I were to come now and say, I heard God spoke to me yesterday, he said this and that and that. At church, everybody was going to be like, yay, that's enviable. If I were to go to my workplace and tell them, I heard God speak to me, everybody's going to go looking at me like that, because in that context, that's hearing voices. So now, where am I going with that in response to this question is, there's something that characterizes all the disorders in the DSM is clinical. So so before something is a disorder, it has to cause you clinically significant distress. That's a big word. So it has to make you feel very uncomfortable. So it's not just about making another person uncomfortable, but you feel very uncomfortable, like the anxiety is so overwhelming that it's uncomfortable. It's affecting your ability to relate with people. So it's affecting your ability to function socially. And it's affecting your ability at work or in school. So those three broad areas, at that point, you really, really need to seek professional help. Now, what's to say that, I think by the time you're asking this question, you get into that, at least the point where you're feeling like distressed. So if you feel distressed, if you feel that this is more than I can handle, so there's anxiety, hustle bustle of every day, right? you did a lot. It was really overwhelming. You came back home and you feel stressed, but you don't feel like it was more than you could handle. You're good. You sleep, you wake up, you get into it, and you do it again. But when it starts getting to you where you're feeling uncomfortable, like you're starting to feel, I can't do this anymore. This is overwhelming. You just don't want to get up in the morning and go anymore, then you need to seek help. Or, your wife, you're beginning to fight, you're beginning to fight with your husband, you're beginning to fight with your parents or your children, you're kicking the dog, and, yelling at your kids, and the relationship is just bad, or your work, is starting to suffer, the quality of your work, at your job, or your academics starts to suffer, that's when you know that you have to seek help, because we all feel depressed here and there. We all need some amount of anxiety to function optimally, and who has not heard a voice, a tapping, something, your name being called, who's not experienced that before? So we've got all these symptoms and spectrums of symptoms, but when it becomes impairing, that's a huge signal for you to get professional help.
Just to add to that very quickly, and it's addressing the last part of the question, which is, are we getting soft out here compared to in Nigeria? First thing I'm going to say is that the stress in Nigeria is phenomenal. Okay, it's just crazy. It's worse than before we left, that's for sure. But more importantly, nature abhors a vacuum. What I mean by that is, in Nigeria, you don't have access to mental health like you have out here. Nowhere near that. I don't know how many practitioners of Nigerian origin are in the States, but I know of people I know personally. There's, in my WhatsApp group for psychiatrists in Canada, we're over 230 of us. If you go to Nigerian Medical Council, I don't think there are up to 40 psychiatrists in the whole country for 200 million people. So that gives you context. And that's why you find a lot of mental health difficulties are not being treated by mental health professionals. The churches take care of that because something has to come in. Something has to, do you know what I mean? If it's not the church, it's the babalawo, there is the stress, is stress, is stress. And in the absence of the right, people that are meant to take care of this, well, something is going to fill that vacuum. So, and Nigeria is bloody stressful, man. I can't even begin to, look, I respect anybody in Nigeria, man. That's a different country.
I think when we talk about Nigeria as a stressful place, I will go a step further and say it is unbelievably difficult. And for anyone in Nigeria who's surviving, that is stamina at a high level. So it's something that we need to commend, we need to celebrate, because it's not normal. So a lot of what we go through in Lagos, and for those of us who actually still go back quite a bit, you realize that you come back and you feel as if you've gone through war. But there's also a different kind of stress here in the US and in the developing world. And whilst we might not see it from a generational standpoint, we might not see it on ourselves because we're kind of like first generation. Our children really, and this is where we have to be careful for those who have parents, because they are imbibing the westernized culture in all its fullness, both good and bad. And I say that because if we apply the same pressure points that we went through and we survived, and we apply it to them without caution here in the US or in the UK or in Europe, we could begin to find instances where some of our kids snap. I know of instances, and this is heavily from a religious standpoint. I know of many instances where many of the children of some of our peers, their children are imbalanced. And it's because some of the pressures that have been applied on them, they've brought Nigeria pressure points and trying to apply it in a developed world without really providing them with maybe what I call training and ability to handle those pressures effectively. So I say all this that whilst we're looking at the Nigerian system as, it's very tedious, it's very difficult, it has an outlet. Many of the Owambes and the parties, while we criticize and we laugh at people for going for parties and what have you, those are great avenues to allow pressure to actually dissipate. We don't have that much here in the US or in the UK as much. And so oftentimes what we have is we have a buried system where people really don't have ability to manage and handle themselves. But overall, I think we all have pressure. I just want to call out that we need to be sensitive and aware of those different pressure and challenges.
Well, thanks for the remarks and the comments. I think we can take this as a wake-up call for Owambears in this part of the world. So be encouraged to schedule something and call everybody to come on. But I just had a quick comment to that question. I think the average Nigerian, and this is me like a few years ago too, I think our exposure to mental health is the madman on the street. I think Dr. Ogo mentioned as like schizophrenia. So is there any impact of that mindset or that perception of mental health in that context where things have to get really, really bad, or, to the point where, similar to a madman on the street before it is deemed mental health? There's not a lot of talk about depression or anxiety as we get in this part of the world. Would that ultimately, escalate into something more, or what are your thoughts on that?
So true the way you describe it. In Nigeria, we're all managers. You will manage until it gets too bad. A lot of what we do here is prevention. Think of it like infrastructure. Nobody maintains roads in Nigeria. Nobody maintains the street lights. It's when it spoils, then they get to it. And that's a function of essentially, we don't have the money to do these things, okay? So we will keep manage that generator until it spoils, then we'll try and fix it. But if you're maintaining it, it wouldn't have been so bad, right? Apply the same thing to human beings. It's all to do with affluence. The more affluent a society is, the more it takes care of its mental health. Back home, that madman walking the street naked, he went through so many stages that there could have been intervention at any different point. But because, we're trying to feed back home, you don't have the luxury of, my son is saying, let's go see a psychiatrist. Where did you see a psychiatrist? And when you did see him, do you have the money to pay for that? Do you know what I mean? So in Nigeria, we're all managers. We will manage and manage and manage until you can't manage anymore, and then you're in front of somebody.
Well, thanks for that response. It appears that some updates on Owambe is coming through. Dr. Cyril hosted one in New York last weekend, and there's another one in June 19th. More details coming shortly. All right, we'll move on to the next question. This question came from Oga Goldme, and his question is, do psychedelics such as mushrooms or shrooms help with depression?
Let me take that question. So part of what I do is I do research, and different times bring different things to the people who are experiencing that at that time. Psychedelics in the 60s were being investigated for a lot of these mental health difficulties that we have. Remember, a psychedelic is like any other drug. It's a chemical, and different chemicals do different things in the brain. Psychedelics was criminalized in the 60s. So unfortunately, a lot of the research that would have been done with it didn't come to fruition, okay? So when I'm asked this question a lot by my patients, like, can we use a certain psychedelic, maybe a mushroom or LSD to do certain things? The answer I always give is, I don't know. I haven't done the full research on that. I can tell you about the drugs that we've used for the last 80 or 90 years. I know exactly what they do. With psychedelics, because there's that missing piece in the research aspect of what we're doing, you've only got certain states you can do these experiments on, or some parts of Canada, for instance, right? So until we have the full results coming back from all the research, you can't give a definitive answer. Are there certain instances that it can improve the mood? Definitely. Are there certain instances that it can help with creative arts performance? Definitely. Are there instances where it can stop you being suicidal? Definitely. But at what dose, at what mix, we don't know these things. So that's the best answer I always give. And because I'm a human being, I don't know everything, right? What I do know is evidence. And Wole would say the same thing. We practice an evidence-based medicine. I do not guess. I will not, I can wager theories all the time. Like I really want to know, if Kaide really has any bad dreams from AFMS or not. But until I check these things and authenticate it, I don't know. So it's an evidence-based thing that we do. So I hope that answers that question. It helps in certain areas, but we haven't tied the bow yet on what the research is.
Maybe this is a good time to add to piggyback on this question. This is one that came in last week. It was a question asking if there's any data that supports that legal marijuana use in this parts of the world has increased, has created a corresponding increase in psychosis or psychiatric episodes.
I will happily take that question. I live in Canada. And here in Canada, cannabis is now legalized. I can see how you're smiling. I'm not sure what you're going to use this night, but so here's the thing. Cannabis use it's 2,000-3,000 years old, right? It was criminalized in the past, and now it's now decriminalized in Canada. What I find in my ER and people that are coming to me is that psychosis cases have gone up. But then I'm very careful to answer this question. Is cannabis bad? Not necessarily 100% bad. But if you have a propensity for psychosis, cannabis will tip you over. If you're using cannabis when you're much younger, so I have people who are First Nations, Aboriginals, you might call them, in America, they're called Indians, right?
Native Indians.
Native Indians and all, so I'm being very careful about use of terms. But so in the First Nations, you find people have patients that are coming in, they've been using cannabis since they were 13 or 14. Now, the human brain, remember, we're saying that anything with mental health is a brain disease. In the same way you have a disease in your heart, in your pancreas, etc. When we're developing, even though you can start to vote at the age of 18, the brain is not correspondingly ready when you're 18. The brain keeps developing to about 25, 26. If that brain is receiving insults, remember, you've got billions and billions of brain cells. But when you're destroying them at a rate that it shouldn't be destroyed, right? Your ability for day-to-day adulthood is impacted. So if you're using cannabis when you're too young, the likelihood is that the brain you go into adulthood to deal with everything in being an adult, keeping a job, keeping a family, not going crazy, is impacted. Again, like I said earlier on, if you have a propensity genetically towards psychosis, well, cannabis is very lipophilic. It adheres to, God, okay, I don't want to start using medical terms, but essentially it sticks in the brain a lot and it will not go away. And if you're a steady user, you're going to be testing positive up to 6 weeks. So it's going to create connections that should not be created in the brain. Remember, the ability to know that, oh, somebody touched my hand, somebody slapped me, this thing tastes good. It's so many nerve cells firing into the brain and you're able to interpret it. But when you start having connections that should not exist because of cannabis use, it will affect your ability for everyday mental health and wellness. So is cannabis bad? Not really. It's who is using the cannabis and what amounts are you using? What's it doing to you? That's the better answer.
Can I weigh in, just especially about the psychedelic mushrooms, or maybe just generally about substances? I'm an addiction specialist, so substances is my area. So in a nutshell, kind of repeating what Dr. Ogo already said. When you look at all substances, from the most innocuous and the most essential to our survival, being water, you can always take excess of them. So like if you drink too much water, You can drive ions out of your brain, and you can die. You can fall into a coma. You can flood your kidneys excessively and get yourself into trouble if you drink too much water. So even that's as in no causes water, and then take that spectrum to the most terrible substance that we think about. Maybe that would be meth in my area, methamphetamine. It was the same thing in your area. Destroy your teeth, your heart. Kills people. Take it. So, but do you know that for meth, which is on the other extreme, for example, is the same substance, the same basic substance that is in medications we use for ADHD that changes people, turn people's behaviors around, helps them focus, helps them be successful in life. I had a meeting with a group of different physicians. We're trying to put together a private business thing. I was meeting them for the first time. There was like 3 of them, and 3 of them have ADHD, and they take medication, and they've taken medication since they were kids. So these are, of course, white folks. There's no such thing as ADHD in Nigeria. It's just not a thing to be treated. So these are white folks, but they made it to being physicians. I don't think that they will, and they were all older than me. These are, so they started taking these medications since they were kids, and they're all physicians. They wouldn't ever have been physicians without the help of that medication. And it's the same medication that can kill you, like it's on the far side of the substances that you can almost wonder, like, what good can this do? Oh, why am I explaining this is, to accentuate what he already said about at what dose, at what quantity, like, at what age is it safe? Some of these medications are safe at certain age and they're not safe at other ages. Cocaine has clinical relevance. We use cocaine in anesthesia. Heroin has clinical relevance. We use it in pain control. All these substances that you think, so marijuana probably has clinical relevance. Your shrooms, yes, probably, but at what dose, we don't know. So there are some frontiers being pushed in the realm of the psychedelic mushrooms. I think there's this enhanced psychotherapy, like microdosing it, and people have, if you microdose it before psychotherapy, people seem to have like a better response to psychotherapy, and that's something that is really becoming mainstream acceptable here in the United States now. But to say that it helps with depression, and these are complex things, especially the psychedelics. I think we call them dissociatives. They don't have really clean effects on the brain. It's not like, they go to the brain and they do this. They're all over, like, they produce different results in different brains and different people. So my point is, look, it's dangerous to use them unsupervised. You might see someone who say, I used it and it gave me this epiphany and my life changed and the arts and stuff. Folks, be careful. If you're already using it and it's helping you, good for you. It's not like we're against it. But like, you really, really need to be careful about these substances. They could make you or mar you. So yeah, that's all I just will add.
Well, thanks to the both of you for that response. I think it's clear that supervision is key when it comes to these things. They all have their pros and cons. So supervision, prescription, whatever that is, would be the way to go. A couple of comments on the chat section on how we've been able to address ADHD in Nigeria through slaps and logins and so yeah. A question came from Perry. He says that, is there a way to prevent old age brain problems such as dementia, Parkinson's, etc.? And I think a response from Monica was, dementia and Parkinson's are more neurological than psychological / mental. But is there a way that it could be prevented?
So that's a brilliant question. And yes, part of the answer is that a lot of this is degenerative parts of getting older, right? So not everybody has dementia, not everybody has Parkinson's, right? So these are things that you inherit from your genetic makeup from the day you were born, okay? We all get older, right? So our cells we have something called telomeres at the end of the cells, right? So as we get older, it starts to wrinkle and all that. The cells don't live as long, they start to die out. That's what we know as old age. So white hair coming out, wrinkles, etc. Okay. In the same way, in the brain starts to degenerate with time, and everybody's brain kind of like starts to degenerate anyway. When we're hitting 90, we're forgetful, no matter who you are. Your sleep is different. You sleep earlier in the day and wake up earlier in the morning, that kind of stuff. It's all part of the change as we get older. But in some individuals, it goes a bit further. So you start to produce certain proteins that shouldn't be there. Say for somebody with dementia, or depending on type of dementia, some it could be, if it's Parkinson's, it's the cells doing that thing that it's triggered to do at that particular time. However, when we talk about dementia, dementias are broad. The most popular one would be the Alzheimer's dementia, because that's I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Wale, it's about 60-70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's.
That's right.
Yeah. However, you have other dementias that can come up due to maybe multiple insults to the brain. For instance, if you're hypertensive and you're not looking after your blood pressure very well, you start having micro infarcts in your brain, you will have a dementia. If you're using drugs like cocaine unsupervised, like we were saying, for instance, and it's going and causing anoxic events in the brain, you have infarcts, you'll have a dementia. If you're getting knocks on your brain all the time, if you're a boxer, for instance, you start having that insult in the brain and you have those anoxic events, you'll have a dementia. So essentially, a dementia is the same thing, but the name just defines what caused that dementia. Okay, so the answer to that question then is, if you can have a healthy enough lifestyle where if you have a high blood pressure and you're looking after your blood pressure, you'll have two streams. One, you're looking after it, you're likely to have a good brain as you get older because you've got good control of what's going on. If you're not doing that, then the likelihood is that with more anoxic events in your brain, you're going to tip towards having a dementia, right? In some instances, we know that even the people that have the Alzheimer's dementia, we're beginning to find certain substances, maybe omega E or whatever, right? It's not my field, to be honest, but I know that there's a lot of research going into trying to slow down, but not pause at this time, but slow down the creation of these proteins in the brain that will cause the Alzheimer's dementia. So just going back to that question, there are things you can do, because I've given you this background of what causes the different dementias, that can either slow down, halt, or move things in a different direction. Where psychiatry comes into it is that, remember, these are neurodegenerative diseases, right? But there are, because of these, you're lacking all these connections in the brain that should do what it should do, you start having psychiatric symptoms coming out. And that's where we're brought into this, okay? So the person is not just forgetful, but is becoming combative. You don't recognize your children anymore. You think they're stealing from you, for instance. You find that you're suspicious of people because of this dementia that you're having, or you're getting very depressed, or you're getting manic. Well, those are now psychiatric components of this neurodegenerative change that is happening. So if you can deal with the initial neurodegenerative change, if you can halt it, modify it, or fix it, well, then, the outcome is improved.
So I have some questions that come from people directly to me that maybe they don't want to ask directly. So you see that I'm pasting them in the comments. So, while one person is answering, if somebody else can look and, so that everybody gets an answer to things that, are really important to them, that'll be very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we've got a number of questions, but I saw someone raised a hand up. This is Ene, I believe. Do you have a question or comments? That's ex-Joe sisters. Is there a question from you or? Okay, I'll move on to the next question, and if she comes on or types a question, I'll read it out. Question from Ogadidayo Akinfolajibi. Question is, how about mental fatigue? What does it mean versus mild depression?
It's
Do you want to take that, Wally?
Yeah, so it's used loosely. I mean, mental fatigue means it's not a clinical term. It's used loosely, and it might mean different things to the person using it. But generally, is like when you become so overwhelmed to the point that you can't think straight, you can't concentrate, you can read a book, you can. So it's more of a symptom than an illness. It could be due to anxiety, it could be due to depression. It's basically a lack in an inability to concentrate, to be able to focus and get things, think through things. So it could be a component of depression, it could be a component of anxiety. In fact, it could be heralding a psychotic disorder. So that's the brief answer. I see there's a lot of questions here. So
yeah.
keep it brief.
Just add very quickly to Wally's answer, which is an excellent answer. There's just one component of that was special, and it's actually, so in psychiatry we have something we call culture-based phenomenon, right? And of which we, Nigeria, we're famous for one of them.
Yeah.
That's called brain fag. Okay. Yeah. So this is we find it mostly in Nigeria compared to the rest of the world. And the characteristics would be somebody who is studying for exams, left everything for way too long, and you want to now cram 6 months of study into one night, and then the next day you're giving like a madman. Nothing works, you can't make sense of what's in front of you. So that's the only one that's been accepted by the rest of the international psychiatric society. And it's a Nigerian phenomenon, brain fag. So yeah, that's the only one I had to add to that.
Well, thanks for that comment. I always thought it was just a strategy until now. So we wait to the last minute and then crash through it. Questions, actually a lot of questions coming through. For the sake of our time, I might merge some of those questions together. There's a few that addressed or that kind of went back to your comments on substance use, specifically heroin. The question was, is it bad if someone is prescribed heroin-based medication for long-term pain? Should they be looking for something else to change to? And then a follow-up question to that was on, a comment that you're scaring someone on your discussions around the use of heroin-based medication and how that could potentially lead to dementia.
Well, like Wale said, heroin is a drug. They're all chemicals, right? So, and it's all about supervision. Heroin is an opiate, and opiates are excellent with pain, right? What is pain? Pain is, the brain interpreting something happening somewhere in the body, okay? And opiates are good at dampening down that effect in the brain. So think of it like crazy example. If you break your spinal cord, right? Somebody can chop your leg off. You don't feel a thing. That's what opiates and heroin would do for the brain, to just dampen that sensation, right? However, if it's not supervised use, you'd find that same cocaine or heroin could go and do something different in the brain, right? So let's go to something like cocaine. Cocaine is excellent for certain things. It causes blood vessels to spasm and stop bleeding, okay? But then it causes euphoria as well because it's a stimulant. Now, if somebody's using cocaine and it's like Antonio Montana shooting people up and down in the movie, it's great and all that, but you don't see the part where you see that because it causes such spasms in blood vessels, right? And it will cause a hole in the septum between the nose. There's the blood supply is not getting to the other side, so everything starts to break down, and it will cause that fistula. So it's the same drug doing one thing, but because it's so messy in what it does in different systems, it's helping here, but it's messing up here. And so that's why medicine, a lot of what we do is dose dependence and targeted use. And it goes back to the argument about the psychiatric nurse practitioner who knows, okay, this drug does this, but then she's not thinking about the myriad of events that can happen because of what this same drug would do to different receptors in the body. That's where that expertise comes in. So not trying to scare anybody, but I'm just saying, like Wale said, supervised use of a drug within its pharmaceutically advised doses, right, makes for good outcomes. And we only have bad outcomes when things aren't used properly or in a supervised manner.
So quick addition. Yeah, I'm assuming maybe this person has a family member who is on chronic opioid treatment, or they themselves, and they're worried. So to the best of my knowledge, and I will admit that I'm probably not 100% on this, the substances that can have evidence that they can cause dementia include alcohol, cocaine, like he already said, methamphetamine, and inhalants. Inhalants, you might not, inhalants and nitric oxide. So the inhalants, like people who huff dusters. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So those are the class of substances among all the other substances that have documented evidence of being associated with dementia. So opioids have not, my point is opioids have no scientific evidence of being associated, long-term use of opioids is not associated with dementia. So you don't need to be worried. We can talk about chronic opioid use, which will be another topic, and whether you should be trying to change to something else. That's going to be a lengthy, very personal discussion based on your unique circumstances, the source of your pain, and several other things. But don't be afraid that you'll get dementia from heroin-based or opioid-based medication.
All right, well, thanks for that response. But it appeared that you you kind of made a comment on the opioids, but you mentioned alcohol, bro, as in,
yeah,
I'm not understanding.
Yeah, so chronic alcohol use, chronic excessive alcohol use is associated with, we call it Korsakoff syndrome, but there is now, based on manual, a neurocognitive disorder, which is basically dementia due to alcohol use. And there's a confabulatory type and non-confabulatory type. You just don't remember stuff, and you start misbehaving, and sometimes you hear voices. Ayo, do you remember this? There was this. Do you remember this RSM? This RSM that will gesticulate. He drinks a lot. You don't remember him?
Oh no, just Oteri.
Is it Oteri? I don't remember. Is it like he would gesticulate a lot and he speaks funny and he forgets things a lot? Like everybody knew him for drinking excessively. Every time I think about, I always remember him. So yeah, so alcohol, chronic excessive alcohol use, not your one beer, two beers 3 times a week, or your occasional binges in parties. That's not what will cause you to have dementia.
Yeah, we're talking like industrial strength. Doing a good job,
All right, thanks for putting us at ease. All right, okay. So I got another question. I might not be able to take all the questions. So what we might do is we'll post this on our platforms and then just ask that the experts provide some response to them, just for the sake of our time. But one more question to take here is how can you improve brain functionality?
Don't do anything excessive.
Because there's actually a lot of information out there about, increasing your retention through the use of some specific kinds of fruits, some specific kinds of drinks. But there's a lot of information out there about, certain routines, certain exercises, and all whatnot to boost memory and improve functionality of the brain. And just wanted to know expert opinion.
So that the answer he gave, it sounds very terse, but that's the answer really. Exercise is good for your health, good for your brain. Food is, but don't do it anything in excess.
In excess.
You have there are these brain hacks now, like these vitamins, brain hacks. I've seen a couple of cases of people who developed worse problems because they're looking for the right combination of brain hacks. They actually, damage their brains. So, you take vitamins, that's good for your health as well as your brain. Exercise is good for your health as well as your brain. In fact, we're finding more role for exercise and brain health. Even exercise helps schizophrenia, cognitive changes in schizophrenia. Like, it's just mind blowing, like how much exercise, the impact. But not excessive, not anything excessive. Healthy food. Why not? It's not just about your brain health, your physical health, which includes your brain is an extension of your body. Really. So anything that you will do for your body for just a healthy lifestyle, yes, but not anything. Don't go searching for that. What the alchemist, key or the stuff, yeah. So
yeah, we're saying the same thing here as well. The whole brain hacking phenomenon. It's brilliant if you can do that. Your productivity is improved, your memory is better, your ability to attend to any cognitive or executive function in the office. You're coming up with, out of the way ideas to fix the same problem. But again, don't use anything excessively. Vitamins are brilliant, but then you're using vitamin C. It's good. But remember, it's an acid. It's going to cause a problem somewhere else if you use too much. So it's all about everything in moderation. It's like alcohol, in moderation. Anything when you go beyond what the body can handle, because remember, your body is a constellation of cells that do different stuff, right? And let's think of it this way. You're shoveling out dirt and somebody's pouring it in. If you're shoveling at the same rate that somebody's pouring it in, you're good. If the person is pouring in faster than you can shovel, the sand will bury you. That's how cells work with everything else, okay? So moderation is good, but in excess, any substance can cause problems in the body.
Excellent remark and response to that question. So I will take this question and I'll take one more and then we'll wrap this seminar. This question is actually related to AFMS. It came from two people, so I'm just going to merge them together. One came from Ogatosi. I'm glad you're still awake in this session, sir. So many ex-jam continue to hear the wake-up alarm in their subconsciousness many months, years after AFMS. Can this pass for a mental health concern? If yes, how will you advise the military training? So we'll hold that thought while I take the second question from Oga Goss. He mentioned that Dr. Ogo mentioned this jokingly at the beginning of the session about PTSD that we experience from our days at AFMS in the form of dreams that takes us back to our experiences. Just wonder if other people experience this, and how do you deal with some of these recurring dreams that seem to relate to our present life endeavors? If you could respond to both questions. I think it has a lot to do with our experiences.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a very good turnaround to how the whole thing started. And remember, we're Nigerians, we're tough people, we're resilient, we're very resilient people, because the kind of stress in Nigeria would go through, Westerner experiencing it, well, Kolomentan are your way, we're really good. However, there's limits to everything. And that's why I was looking at that, it's something I've personally been trying to figure out. Remember again, everything we know, we're using computers, it's all about research. And research will tell you, is this working? Is this not working? What levels of this is good? What levels of this is bad? Personally, I know every once in a while I have dreams that I'm back in AFMS and I'm dodging somebody or I'm trying to dodge somebody, okay? And I'll ask my wife, do you have such dreams from school? She'll look at me strangely, okay? And then I hang out with some of my mates from my class, we're all gisting, and then you throw the question out and people will go like, oh boy, yeah, they get those dreams sometimes. Some people don't, but I'm beginning to find that it's the same thing. It's all about trauma, Was it a good thing? Well, I will say this with all confidence that going through AFMS was one of the best things that happened to me. I might have complained when I was there, but my resilience is so much stronger for it. I know that I will do certain things that my friends or colleagues will not do because I'm saying, what's the worst that will happen? Because I've seen crazy stuff in AFMS, right? I've seen what my limits are, or I think I know my limits are. And that's good in a sense. It helps me to strive, to excel, to do the best I can in anything. But again, it's all about to what level. It's good to push people to get to their limits, but there are downsides to some of these pushes, right? The downside is that some of it was trauma. My kids are born out here. Even though they have my genes, they answer my name and they don't look like me, but they try. Well, you find that, I don't know if they're Kainism, but you find essentially that I would be afraid to send them to AFMS because I'm not sure that they have the resilience to go through AFMS. And I'm not insulting them by saying that about my kids. I'm just saying it's just the reality. They're growing up in a different place that they don't have any of the resilience that we had. So I have those dreams. Is it affecting my ability to function? No. Is it affecting my ability to give help, medical advice, or the best medications to my patients? No. Is it affecting my ability for a relationship with my wife and my kids? Not really. So it's not to the point of it being problematic. So it's not a disorder. But remember, everything about illness is a spectrum from stage 1 to stage 10. If stage 10 is you're bloody crazy, you're locked up in a psych ward, that is 10, and 1 is nothing they happen, then maybe I'm at 2 or 3 for trauma. Because I'm having those recurrent dreams, I find it uncomfortable. I don't like those dreams. I don't want to have it, and I'm jealous of people like Kaide that don't have it because they were the orgas. They had no seniors that were driving them crazy, So I hope that answers the question. It's all about that spectrum, that continuum. And it's something that personally I just want to do that research, and one day I hope to come back to you guys and put a bow on it and say, this is what I found.
I got a question, actually. I was listening to something about bipolar. It was actually a lecture today during my walk. And one of the things the doctor mentioned when he was talking about this was the fact that you have people who basically, because of the way they're wired, that's not exactly how he used it, but because of the way they're wired, and I think he was talking about depression, the depressive side of being bipolar. He actually said that if people are more in that state, then they actually tend, the negative things that happen to them tend to stay with them longer or stick to them. And that just takes me back to wondering how many of people that go through AFMS already had, some mental health issues that were not fully blown. Because now when we go back in time and we talk about this, some of the people that you can think of, that I can think of, I realized they were depressed. They were depressed in AFMS, right? And when they talk about these things, you'll see that some people, like I see some comments earlier on about PTSD. We go through the whole same thing, and the description of what happened to us is different, right? And in one set, same squadron or same class, you discover that the description of the AFMS experience is different, and the feelings are valid, right? So how, just thinking about it now, is there something that they can do for the incoming junior airmen? Because they do, there's the medical
physical
no.
check, yeah.
Yes, but not. I don't think anything is done concerning the mental health.
That is such a brilliant question, and the simple answer is, if we had the ability to do that, then I would definitely recommend that, if somebody has a proclivity towards a mental difficulty, perhaps AFMS might not be the best place for you, or not. This is an answer that one is very careful in taking, because you see, if we're saying that somebody has a mental difficulty shouldn't be included in certain things, that's where stigma starts. So it's all down to resilience. Let me give you some depressing statistics. There's 7 billion people in the world. Out of that 7 billion people in the world, 1% of the world always has schizophrenia. Check any country, check any culture, it doesn't matter. 1% of the population of the world, so one out of every 100 has schizophrenia. 2 or 3 out of every 100, that's 2-3%, will have an anxiety disorder. About 4% will have bipolar, right? So these things are actually more common than we think. And it's all about where in the continuum is that particular individual that has it, from stage 1 to stage 10. And these are the things that affluent countries are beginning to recognize more and more. And that's why there's more spend in mental health than everything else, because your heart can fail, you can do a heart transplant, your kidneys are messing up, you can do a kidney transplant. We don't know how to transplant the brain yet. So that's why it's the final frontier for all the research and all the money and all the spend. So remember, again, I said to you that I'm not sure if you have up to 40 psychiatrists in the whole country. So you see there's already difficulties with access to doing what we need to do. So the answer to that question is, we have a problem of mental health access in the country. Number 2, we don't want to, because of stigma, prevent people from experiencing something that, maybe their resilience is enough, and even though you might have bipolar down the line, at that age you don't. These are diseases that come as you get older anyway. So depriving somebody of that experience wouldn't be fair, right? And some people have such anxiety at a younger age that AFMS might break them. So it's difficult to tell what the answer should be. Any form of mental health evaluation would be very helpful if it's possible, but I wouldn't, because of that, deprive people of certain experiences that I think are very enriching, like going to AFMS and the connections that you make in life through that.
Well, thank you so much for that response, Dr. Ogo. I think we'll take the last question, and then we'll move on to closing remarks from Oga President. And then we'll open up the lines for everyone to chime in and have a chit chat before we wrap the session up. The last question came in from Oga Gbenu, and his question is, what's the impact of frequent sexual activity to the brain?
Okay, so sex is good. If there was no sex, none of us would be here, that's for sure. What does it do for the brain? It's an excellent reliever, both for men and women. However, like everything else, too much of any activity will cause problems. So you might enjoy the sex, but if you're getting it from 3 women and your wife just caught you, you're on your own, right? So it's all about moderation, I guess. But sex is good all around.
If I may just add, one of the key hormones that is released during sexual activity is a hormone we call oxytocin.
Oxytocin, right? Yeah.
Oxytocin. So it's, dopamine is another one which gives that feeling of enjoyment. Oxytocin is unique in the sense that it's the hormone that is that helps with nurturing, that feeling of, that's what women have that makes them have that. They have that nurturing. So it's like the love hormone, kind of. So you might find that after sexual activity, congenial activity with your partner, that you're more likely to be more touchy, more likely to release money for the soup, more likely to be in the giving mode, more likely to be like he said, this is stress relieving, more likely to be more gracefully disposed, even to the kids. So that's that oxytocin there. So sex is good, you know, in socially acceptable, spiritually acceptable settings. Now, there are a few questions. I don't mind. I don't know if you mind. There's a few questions on the chat board here and there that I just feel like maybe I can take one minute to address them. So somebody, I think they're a nurse practitioner. I'm suspecting they're not practicing. They're asking if, so I don't know if they're in Canada or in the US. If you're in the US and you know you wanted to see if I can supervise you, unfortunately I cannot. I cannot wait to be able to do that. Currently I'm on faculty at the university, and the university has like a horrendous process for you to go through. Basically, I know my department's take on it is they don't want to do it. So they created this huge thing. So unfortunately, it's not possible. Hopefully in the next couple of years, I'm planning to go into private practice. I'll be so happy to help out a lot of Nigerian folks who are looking for supervision to be nurse practitioners at that point. So I cannot, I don't know if Dr. Ogo will kind of weigh in on that in case this person is in Canada. The other questions I wanted to pitch into quickly is somebody asked about what vitamins might be good for the brain. The ones that I can remember, folate, B12, B6, thiamine. So you should be careful about how you, I'm assuming over the counter, what you will have is what is safe, because some of these vitamins are water soluble, which means it's really hard to overdose on them. But the fat soluble ones, you can overdose on them. They can destroy your kidneys if you take excess. So be careful about them, you know, like nothing, like that's what he was saying about not just be immoderate, but thiamine, folate, vitamin B12, and B6, you know, kind of for the brain and nervous system. The last one is somebody said, how does vitamin D have effect on mood? Vitamin D's effect on mood is not a direct brain effect. My understanding is more, and I had to read a lot about this because I had vitamin D deficiency. So I was like, okay. So it's more about your joint, your muscle. So it makes you feel like, and you know, when you feel like that's sore all over, it's going to affect your mood. So it's not so much a direct effect, but it's very important for muscle health, your tendons and all. And so when you feel sore, you don't feel good. So that's that. And then somebody asked about edibles in small doses. So I will circle back to what Dr. we already said. We don't know so much. There's a limit to what we know about this. So, but I have a one sample size anecdotal experience that I'd like to quickly share. This patient, I tried everything on planet Earth available for sleep. Ambien, temazepam, everything, over-the-counter prescribed controlled substances. You know, she'll sleep maybe for a week and then she'll be back to calling my office. She can't sleep. And then she told me, I'm gonna go get marijuana. I'm like, you know, so that's your call, you know, just make sure you get your marijuana card. And boy, the last 6 months, she's been sleeping every day and she's using the edibles and she's a totally changed person. So again, that's one sample size, anecdotal experience. It doesn't speak for the whole population. So can it be helpful? I mean, that's just repeating everything we said. Yes, likely, but you know, we cannot recommend it for you on just on that basis because there's a lot of evidence, scientific evidence, still lacking about what is safe, when is it safe, who is it safe in. Thank you.
Just a very quick one into that, the cannabis for sleep thing. So a lot of the cannabis we have around, it's nothing like the cannabis from the 60s and 70s, right? The ones that are here now, they've been cynically, genetically engineered to be more potent. So the whole cannabinoid versus the THC levels, it's all over the place. So if I get 2,000 samples from the same person, they're not consistent. So it's so difficult to find what works. That's why no doctor would prescribe these things if you want your license to stay intact, right? But do some of it work? Yes, And then cycling back to the person that was asking about the nurse practitioner's license thing in Canada, yeah, sure. I'll be more than glad to help out if I can. Where I am the medical director of my hospital, so that's easy. I can easily find you a psychiatrist that can help you to do that. But it's all about where you are. I suspect I'm in Manitoba, and I think we're beginning to look at nurse practitioners as an addendum to the mental health family right now. So I'll be more than, look, once you're in Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, you need to leg up. Talk less of AFM, oh my God, man, just come. I will help anybody. Yeah, I'll bend the rules, So just, yeah, please feel free.
All right. I think, we every good thing will still eventually come to an end. This has been a very educative and informative session. I want to thank you guys immensely for the time that you spent, for the knowledge that you shared, the experiences, both spiritual, educational, professional opinions that you've shared with us today. We're most grateful for this. And thanks to the both of you. I was actually going to ask or pose the question about the nurse practitioner mentorship request from the. I was going to pose it at the end, but I'm glad that you touched on it. Another comment that came for the Dr. Ogo is, please initiate the research on XJAM. Let's know how we are faring on PTSD and other related issues. So if you're already you're already looking at this.
I'm sure that came from somebody from my set because we're traumatized.
It came from Oga Victor, yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, before I yield to Ogaki and the Oga President, I just want to thank the both of you. Dr. Flo had to drop off. He had to attend to the family. But I want to thank the both of you and thank Dr. Flo as well for the whole build up to the seminar and even making the time to be a part of this. Ogaki, the both of them are not part of our membership. So, by virtue of this seminar, we have two new members. But I really want to thank the both of you, your experiences, your expertise, and sharing this information with us. I think at this time where we needed to get some expert opinion on things or discussions like this, I think you guys have done you've done justice to this topic excellently. So much thanks to you. I'll yield to the president to wrap up this meeting.
All right. So thank you very much. First of all, let me very quickly correct that they are not part of our group. Which group you can't belong to if you are not part? You are just not in the WhatsApp group.
In the WhatsApp group.
Yes. I remember now. My apologies.
The WhatsApp group. That's
exactly.
right.
I'm just not in the WhatsApp group.
I repent my ways.
They know how they say it. They know that they're part of XJAM community past this one that you guys have. So thank you very, very much. So again, I will reemphasize the fact that we came to you and immediately, basically we asked once, you answered twice, right? Yes, I am going to reschedule my whole, timetable so that I will be part of this. And as you can see, there are many questions. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, we need to bring you back for a full question answer session, because you kind of explained like the first hour, but as you can see, the questions are still coming in. So if you can find that time again, we can schedule it, soon so that you can just spend the whole session, basically going back and forth. Now, you will see some of the comments I was posting. While it was funny, it was some people's reality, right? So you've actually helped to resolve questions that people can't even ask outside. They can only ask in-house. So do not take for, of course, that already. It's not a small thing that you have done for the whole community. 1. 2, it's recorded, which means that people who were not able to attend actually can listen to this whole thing later on. And then, of course, it'll bring more questions. It's a privilege that in a country that has 200 million people, and how many psychiatrists did you say again? 40 or so? Did you say 40 or something like that? that in North America we can pull 2 just like that, right? Into a forum like this and basically just throw questions at them. So we really, really appreciate what you've done for us this evening, and we hope that you'll be able to come back again and then basically take a whole question answer session. So the way this works is that this is the equivalent of the big hall. And so after this comment, we'll shut it down, but then people can, basically put on their mics, and you can always, there are people who haven't seen each other in like 30 years that will be yelling, and then there'll be more, off the side questions and all that. So that's how we usually do this. On behalf of the XJAM in North America, I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Flo, Dr. Ogo, and Dr. Popola for doing this session with us. As you can tell, it's very, 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 very valuable. And to everybody who came, I see people from Lagos who basically, it looks like it'll be like 12 midnight or something like that in Lagos, who joined. And that tells you how much value this is to everybody. And there are so many people, as you can tell, that had questions and had them answered. So to everybody who's come together, we want to say a big thank you to for coming, actually, because that's what also makes the people who have basically put their time down to know that, oh, this is something of value. So thank you very much for everybody who showed up. And I always end by saying that everybody has a unique skill set that is very valuable to the brand, the XJAM brand. And we're not expecting that you should come and deliver 24 hours of your time, right? But if you can give us 1 or 2 hours, whatever you can dedicate to the XJAM, to our upliftment, we will take it and we will basically blast it out there so that it provides so much value to everybody. So I will continue to say this. If you have not given us of your time, we need your time. Then if you have not paid your annual dues, we need your annual dues too, right? Consider it, what we use to do all these kind of things that we're doing to basically uplift the XJAM brand. And I think it's very clear how people want to associate with the brand. It's because of the value that we all contribute towards it. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, and thank you. And this meeting is now officially over.
Okay. X-Jaws. We have X-Jaws on this.
Oh, Nasa, they always enter. So, thank you very much. So, wow. All right. Okay, no come say maybe I chop edible. On behalf of the XJAM North America, we never have anything that we organize that the XJAW is not present to, basically contribute their presence and contribute. There's always a lot of contribution from the XJAW. So, and it's the reason also why the Secretary General is telling me you dare not end the session without basically mentioning the XJAW. So on behalf of the XJAM in North America, we want to say a big thank you to our sister school, the XJAW in North America and in the UK and in Nigeria and all over the world for again being part of this session and many questions that came from them. So I think, have I missed anything, Ayo?
We're good to go.
All right, good. So, and just before I close, I don't know, doctors, if it is possible for me to get excuse duty for the oxytocin so that I can take the thing that doctor said that this thing should be happening, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening, So please.
Dr. Ogo, I had Dr. Ogo write prescriptions for
If there's any prescription, please give me so that
just hit him up.
It becomes a matter. It becomes a matter of life. It becomes a matter of life or All right. So now, everybody, you are free to unmute yourselves. Please show your faces. Let's see your faces. Let's make sure that I think people like Victor Ishak was rubbing powder. He should have finished by now. Sorry. Oh, you can stop recording now, please. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The floor is now open for the regular chit chat. You can unmute yourselves. Or
I think I'm waiting to stop. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just stop.
Unmute yourselves, and then now you can yab each other if you want.
Let's see. Where's Shagsy?
All of them, they.
So Gagbenu need to pay a mental health allowance.
Oh, maybe.
Who traumatized him?
So they're saying
It's
that
saying that they
unable
can't
to.
unmute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they
All right.
can't unmute.
So, all right. So let me do this. Allow participants to unmute themselves. I have just selected that.
How we are?
Okay, you people are traumatizing us without volume or no mic.
Abi.
After this session, you shall allow us to contribute to that.
This is what happens when you give some people a little bit of power. It's now they will ban Twitter, they will ban Facebook, they will ban Zoom. Hey guys, thank you very much. Kunle Okune here, saying thank you for beautiful session. I joined halfway, but it was very, very informative. So I'm intrigued, though, really surprised to hear people still, having memories of EFMS. It's like I've forgotten a lot. Not because my EFMS experience was not impactful, but I think my current problems are so massive that wife problem, children problem, relative problem.
Oga Kunle, let me help you. All right. In 1988, there's something that we will never forget. Red Squadron, all 88 sets, that they'll call all of us to Block B was Red Squadron or Gaza.
Hey, I don't remember that too.
No, I have two of my colleagues here. They will tell you, as soon as class is over, Form 1 falling in Block B, we are going to visit Omotola.
I know Red Squadron, I only entered Red Squadron twice in my first year. That's how scared of that place I was.
And I thought we were gentle,
Here's the problem. When we talk PTSD, it doesn't help when part of the panelists, where they try to teach you about mental health, Popola and Ayo Adams. How the hell am I supposed to cope with my mental health when the two people wait on me?
I was about to off my video.
My video, I can't remove. I think the host has.
How you want answer the question when you go see Oga Popola? You remember Yellow Squadron knock? You see Oga Ayo Adams. You remember say you be appointment with Sam Job or damn. Then they tell you say you don't get mental health problem. Now, wow.
We're trying to correct the sins of the past now. That's what we're trying to do.
This is the therapy now. There's something
this is the therapy that we're doing. What more can we do? What more do you want?
There's something we call exposure therapy.
Here's the issue with,
thank you very much, guys.
Here's the issue with Red Squadron. Before you actually got to Red Squadron, you had to pass Purple Squadron that used to exist. So those of us in Purple Squadron, our PTSD used to start when the bell for a class over starts, because by the time we are jogging to Purple Squadron, we start seeing that balcony that was there, that was just showing that the angel of death was waiting for everybody.
I see me, I was all right. Purple Squadron was a different level on its own.
Oh God! In fact, like for like a whole term, there was a law in Purple Squadron that junior boys could not walk. I mean, how wouldn't I have PTSD? I mean, you have to forward.
When you hear the statement, it's really nice hearing that these laws were there. There were those that also carried these laws down to us, the younger ones. Like they are here. That we couldn't walk in our lives. Till now, I see they run 10 kilometers every day. I don't know who
when you hear of mental health and you hear of this statement that says this life not balanced. Now today I realize when they say this life not balanced, the enabler of mental health they are the ones now talking to us. About mental health. The life is really not balanced.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Saz. It's nice to see you in a long while. It's been a while.
Yeah, same here. I was hoping you'll turn on your video. It's really nice to see you.
Wale, it looks to me like you were terrorizing a lot of people back in the day.
Which Wale, sir? I don't know which Wale.
Dr. Wale, I'm talking about.
No, it's Ayo. I think you meant Ayo Adam. Ayo Adam.
Dr. Wale, I'm talking about you.
Okay, Jora, the two names are completely different.
Dr. Wale, you were in yellow squadron, Abi?
Yes.
Okay, me too. I was in yellow.
Oh, my video has been stopped too.
Oh, sorry.
No, Kasim, we can see you.
I'm here. I'm good.
I can see you.
But hey, listen, guys, this has been phenomenal, man. Dr. Ogo, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and to our moderators, to to Ayo and to Tibet. Thank you so much. Like you all know, in our society, too often we hold a lot of things inside, and we don't want to speak it out. And thank God that we have such a forum to be able to express ourselves, to be able to bring these things to the fore, and to be able to talk about it and have some answers from experts of our own organic origin, so that you guys were able to address a lot of our questions, mainly from our makeup. And thank you so much for what you've done. This is just absolutely fantastic and phenomenal.
By the way, those who don't know, this Ogagos na 80 set, because I know you're looking at him. Hey, this man will be where he na 80 set,
aka ancestors.
If you ever heard the story of those junior airmen that were so tall that they made special beds for them, he was one of the two for their set.
The myths and legends we used to hear about.
Did you ever hear the gist of
ancestors now?
Did you hear the gist of the basketball in America? Did you ever hear that gist? This not him here now. Let's see.
Are you saying that this our whole history of PTSD that was passed down, that they've set the standard?
Exactly.
The reason why we're here having this meeting.
How many of you met Wing Commander Malam?
Malam
was sent to FMS as a flying officer.
My God.
Now them be the initial terrorists.
Dr. Ogo was saying something earlier.
Ugeje was our own set. The
very first Ugeje was our commandant.
For 80 sets, the very first set was their seniors were officers initially that came and basically, they basically unleashed terror. And these were like, now in hindsight, you realize these are 22-year-olds that are just finished from university. They now, we no get wife, no get girlfriend. They now send them to FMS.
I think the difference that they had for you guys compared to us, because I'm just postulating, right?
Yeah, but
the
also
difference was that they, unlike seniors who sleep in the same room with you, they will go home.
No, they're not going to go home. The officers are not going home.
They don't get girlfriend.
The officers, I tell you, see, some of those officers, they don't know how to toast. So when they give them a show, they come straight to FMS. They wake the whole school up. Actually, I was going to ask.
Tibe, let me say something, man. You see that? Wait a minute. You see that man Ugueje?
Yeah.
When he came to AFMS, he was a pilot officer.
Yes, he was a pilot officer. Yes,
I was a 17 years old, and he was 22 years old.
Yeah. Yes,
and that's one of the things was a freaking. He was mean as hell.
Yeah. Him and Dambafa.
God, I mean, he was so mean.
Dambafa, by the way,
Ugueje was in charge of yellow. Dr.
Yes.
Wale, yellow when we were there. Ask Dr. Flo. Dr. Flo was in my room.
Dambafa is now the sergeant at